Chapter 1807. Wisps of bright light fell down and bathed Ahu's graceful figure in it, making her look holy and pure. Lin Sun's pupils shrank. He suddenly raised his head and looked carefully. Soon, he locked onto the source of this ray of light. It was a peach as white as jade, as big as a fist. It was hidden in the branches and leaves, with wisps of strong divine brilliance flowing down its translucent surface. Looking at Ahu, she stood there with her eyes closed. Her breath was faintly discernible like an old monk in meditation, just like the blue-robed man with the ancient sword on his back and others. Lin Sun frowned. He looked at Ahu and then at the wooden tablet next to her. Life is like a dream. How many springs and autumns do people live? He was sure that if he recited these words like Ahu did, it would surely cause such a strange and unusual event to occur. However, was this change good or bad? Lin Sun looked at the bottom of the tree. Under the rolling mist, there were piles of white bones and corpses. Had these corpses experienced such a change before they were alive? Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that a figure standing not far away suddenly let out a burst of joyful laughter. He looked like a teenager, with white hair and a bun on his head. Even when he laughed, his eyes were closed tightly, like the laughter of an idiot in a dream. Boom! The next moment, the body of the man in linen seemed to be on fire, but he seemed to be unaware of it. His face was full of calmness, joy, and a smile that seemed to see through everything. Taoism Pier! Lin Sun shouted. He had seen that this man was showing signs of Qigong deviation, and his cultivation would be completely incinerated. But the man in linen didn't notice it at all. His flesh and blood began to turn into flying ashes inch by inch. This strange and horrible scene made Lin Sun's heart turn cold. He didn't hesitate to make a move to warn the man. However, his palm was dissolved by an invisible force near the peach tree before it could get close to the man. In the end, under Lin Sun's shocked gaze, the white-haired man in linen turned into a corpse and lay on the ground. Just like that, he died silently with a smile on his face. Lin Sun's expression flickered. He looked up at the top of the peach tree, where there was a fresh and translucent peach that was as red as the sunset. The strands of divine radiance that descended onto the white-haired man earlier had come from such an immortal peach. Could it be that the hidden danger here is really on the peaches on the tree? Lin Sun's expression was extremely solemn. He had never seen such a strange thing before. What worried him the most was that Ahu's current condition was exactly the same as the white-haired linen's. Lin Sun asked Little Silver, who shook his head to show that he didn't know. He then asked Old Toad, Alu, Little Tian and the big black bird. None of them could give him an answer. The Kunlun ruins was one of the 4 great ancient gods' ruins, and there were countless secrets buried there. Since ancient times, no one had been able to see through all the secret. What more Old Toad and the others? Originally, Lin Sun planned to ask Wu Kei, the spirit of the insignificant Bao, who was silently healing his injuries, but he suddenly thought of a person. To be precise, it was a tree. Whoosh! The next moment, the divine alchemy ancestral tree, which had traveled with the sky-splitting emperor, turned into a green glow and was released by Lin Sun. Peach Tree of Immortality. As soon as it appeared, it screamed excitedly, "Ha ha ha, this must be the Kunlun ruins. Only the Kunlun ruins can give birth to such a wonderful thing." Lin Sun's eyes lit up. This old tree obviously knew something. It made sense. This guy was the divine alchemy ancestral tree, which could be classified as divine trees with the peach tree of immortality. In other words, they were the same kind. Can you see the danger here? Lin Sun asked. The divine alchemy ancestral tree calmed down from its frenzy. It looked at the peach tree of immortality, then at Ahu and the man and woman in the distance. I once heard from the sky-splitting emperor that the peach of immortality is also known as the big dream Tao fruit. If you want to swallow this fruit, you must go through a trial in the dream. If you are not strong enough, you will harm yourself in the trial. Some people will fall into a dream and think that they have seen through the mysteries of the great Tao. They will lose their Tao heart and die from qi deviation. If I'm not wrong, then the corpses at the bottom of the immortality peach tree were probably tempered by the dream and were unable to free themselves from it, so they perished. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed when he heard the words of the divine alchemy ancestral tree. He believed most of it, because he had just seen how the white-haired man in linen clothes suffered. Doesn't that mean Hu is in danger too? Lin Sun's heart tightened. No, that will depend on her fortune. If she can pass the trial in the dream, she will be able to obtain a supreme fortune. The divine alchemy ancestral tree said. Lin Sun frowned and said, but it is still too dangerous. Is there no other way to obtain the fortune? I don't know about that. The divine alchemy ancestral tree shook its head. Lin Sun was a little disappointed and put the divine alchemy ancestral tree away. Before the old tree left, it still said, "Little friend, don't forget about the 5-colored soil. It is even more precious than the peach of immortality, the 5-colored soil." With a thought, Lin Sun spread his spiritual awareness and looked down from the sky. He immediately noticed that this vast plain was colorful and filled with 5 kinds of light and shadow: green, gold, black, red, and white. Could it be that the 5-colored soil was really growing under the ground? As soon as he thought of this, Lin Sun suddenly noticed that Hu was struggling, as if she was fighting against some extremely terrible force and trying to wake up. But no matter how hard she tried, it was of no use. On the contrary, as she struggled and resisted, the essence, energy, and spirit in her entire body started to become chaotic, and she faintly showed signs of burning. Oh no! Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank. Just now, the white-haired man in linen clothes suffered qi deviation in this state. His body was burned and he finally died. Hu, you must hold on. I'm coming to save you. Lin Sun shouted and operated the secret of Pusho's roar. His voice surged like thunder. He was anxious, but there was nothing he could do to save Hu. The feeling of powerlessness and anxiety made Lin Sun unable to calm down. Inexplicable anger surged in his heart. Swish! In the end, Lin Sun stared at the peach tree angrily. He was absolutely unable to tolerate Hu suffering just like that because he owed Hu too much in these past few years. I'll destroy this stupid tree. Lin Sun gritted his teeth and suddenly stepped into the air. His eyes were like lightning, locking on a peach condensed on the peach tree. The peach was as white as jade. The divine light flowing out of it fell down and enveloped Hu's figure. It could be said that it was the culprit. In order to save Hu, he didn't care about anything else and went all out. Lin Sun's eyes were cold. The aura around him ran like a landslide and a tsunami, and he suddenly punched with all his strength. Boom! The world trembled. The horrible fist force containing Lin Sun's anger roared out, condensed and powerful to the extreme. The fist of shaking heaven. This punch, which could easily kill Emptiness Saint, just made the peach tree tremble and then was dissolved by the rolling divine light. This tree was too extraordinary. It was like the backbone of the world. Its crown was like an umbrella that covered the sky and the sun, and it flowed with a rain of divine light. Hu's pretty face gradually turned pale. Her face was full of struggle and discomfort. She seemed to be enduring great pain, and her body was trembling slightly. Her qi became more and more chaotic. Hu, you must hold on. Lin Sun took a deep breath. All the strength in his body was deduced to the extreme. His whole body was like a furnace that was burning. His black hair fluttered in the wind. The depression, anxiety, worry, and anger in his chest were all vented in his actions. Boom! He let out a long roar. The fist force was like a dragon, and it struck out violently one after another, causing the nearby void to explode and become chaotic. Whoosh! The branches and leaves of the immortality peach tree swayed about, and a beautiful rain of light flowed about. It dispersed all of these attacks, and they couldn't approach at all. It was like an unshakable god. Lin Sun's current combat strength could kill top great sages like Yen Chunjun and Lu Wang. But now, he seemed so powerless. It was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Open up! However, Lin Sun didn't give up. His eyes were red, and he seemed like an ancient demon god that had fallen into a frenzy. A huge abyss appeared around him, causing heaven and earth to change color. Heaven-shaking punch, 9 transformations of Calamity Dragon, Taishian Sword Scripture, void-breaking Finger of Dian, first cut of Heaven. Lin soon released all kinds of martial arts secret techniques to the extreme. All these years, he had rarely been so angry, crazy, and desperate as he was at this moment. He couldn't forget that it was who helped him escape from the Soul Oblivion Sea and gave him the vast universe Arkansas. He couldn't forget that who had guided him to the Flying Immortal Token and brought him to Kunlun ruins. They had fought side by side all the way, killed enemies together, and overcome difficulties together. However, Lin Sun knew very well that if it wasn't for whose guidance and help, it would have been impossible for him to arrive here so smoothly. He owed Hu too much. Or perhaps, he didn't know when it started, but he had long regarded Hu as a best friend who had gone through thick and thin with him. Now that Hu was about to suffer and her life was in danger, how could Lin Sun endure it? Kill! In the void, Lin Sun roared wildly. Even though it was like an ant trying to shake a tree or a moth flying into a fire, he didn't stop or retreat. Rumble! The void here was surging and rumbling. In the end, Lin Sun released the Broken Sword, Avicii Sword, Yuan Killer Sword, Endless Way Tower, Infinite Way Bottle, Insignificant Bow, and other treasures. But in the end it was still in vain. The power released by the Immortality Peach Tree was like the supreme rule, turning into an unshakable barrier. No matter how Lin Sun attacked, it didn't move at all. Kill! However, Lin Sun didn't seem to notice it at all. His fighting spirit, hatred, and anger overlapped in his heart like an erupting volcano, attacking again and again. He was as stubborn as a stone and as ruthless as the wind. A single person was fighting against a legendary divine tree. He seemed so small, but he was so desperate. After an unknown period of time, Lin Sun's consciousness gradually began to blur. The battle with all his strength had caused his physical strength to be on the verge of exhaustion. Unprecedented exhaustion hit him like a tide, making his body feel numb. However, he was still fighting. Kill! 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 Lin Sun's furious and crazy roar echoed in this world, surging in all directions. Chapter 1808. It was the first time that Lin Sun had been so angry since he stepped into the Great Sage realm. It was also the first time that he had released his full strength. His body was numb under the unprecedented exhaustion, but his fighting spirit was still so violent and blazing. The unyielding and stubborn figure was attacking crazily between heaven and earth, as if he would not stop until the last drop of strength. The peach tree was flowing with magnificent divine light, which seemed so merciless that it blocked everything. Until Lin Sun's consciousness became muddled, a sigh suddenly sounded in his heart. I thought, he came again. But you are not him after all. The voice was filled with lingering disappointment. Lin Sun raised his head with a blank look in his eyes. Who? Immediately, his pupils contracted little by little, and the confusion in his eyes dissipated like fog. His muddled consciousness also recovered a trace of clarity. Only now did he notice that a wisp of a violet-colored beautiful figure had suddenly appeared on the Immortality Peach Tree, and it was faintly visible amidst the dazzling divine radiance. It was like a wisp of violet light that was indistinct in the horizon. Did you do that to save her? The soft voice sounded in his heart again. Lin Sun nodded. Of course. You don't want to live anymore? The purple figure asked again. Lin Sun said no. How could he think about anything else when he was saving someone? No wonder both of you are so stubborn even though you've obtained the same inheritance as him. Both of you would rather fight with your life on the line than take a step back." The purple figure sighed softly. Who was he? Lin soon couldn't figure it out, and he didn't want to think about it. A long time ago, there was a guy who was much more powerful than you. He barged into this place and cut down the immortality peach tree without any regard for anything else. He took away all the fruits of the tree. He said that he had to bring such delicious peaches back to the sect and let his fellow disciples have a taste. The purple figure's voice was filled with reminiscence and a hint of a smile. However, in the end, he was still unable to do as he wished. That's because this is the only immortality peach tree in the world. How could someone like him, who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, possibly touch it? Later on, before he left, he said that he would definitely come back in the future to chop down the immortality peach tree that had been bothering him and use it as firewood. Only then would he feel satisfied. What happened later? Lin Sun asked. Then, the violet figure fell silent for a long time before he sighed lightly. I've been waiting for him to return until I met you. I suddenly realized that he might never return. The immortal peach tree was still there. It had not been chopped into firewood and burned. Of course, he had never returned. Something to do with me? Lin Sun frowned. Nothing to do with it, the purple figure said. I only know that a long time ago, there was only one person in his sect who mastered the battle saint technique. Her voice became low, but people like him would never accept disciples. Boom. Lin Sun felt as if his head had been struck by lightning, and an unruly figure, like the dominator of war, emerged in his mind. He had once swept through the 9 heavens, slaughtered his way into the clouds, looked down upon arrogance, and shook the ages. So it's him, Lin Sun understood, and there was a trace of trance in his eyes. Senior Xian Kong of Mount Fangsuan had once said that among the dozens of senior and junior brothers in the sect, only one had ever mastered the battle saint technique. Unless he encountered a great calamity or knew that a great calamity was about to befall him, he wouldn't leave such an inheritance behind. The purple figure's voice was a little sad and low. Lin Sun suddenly said, That's not necessarily the case. He left the inheritance just to make the Tao fire last forever. How could he infer a matter of life and death? The purple figure was stunned and fell into silence. Lin Sun turned his eyes to the peach tree. There, the beautiful figure of who was still there. Although her pretty face was pale and her eyes were closed, her chi had become stable. Lin Sun let out a long sigh of relief. When he relaxed his mind, he felt waves of tide-like tiredness and sleepiness. His body was sore and swollen, and there was a feeling of exhaustion both inside and outside his body. The desperate attack just now had consumed too much of his energy. Then, I'll wait a little longer. After a long time, the purple figure seemed to have figured it out, and said with a hint of joy and relaxation in her voice, Anyway, I'll wait for him to come back, my young friend. You can pick as many as 9 peaches of immortality here. If you pick too many, you'll be contaminated with karma. At that time, he didn't care about karma at all. Remember, you can only take 1 peach of immortality. Taking more is useless for your cultivation. If you have a chance to see him in the future, remember to tell him not to forget what he said at that time. Well, that's it, then. The purple figure disappeared. Like a rain of light, it disappeared from the immortality peach tree. Lin Sun was stunned. At that moment, he suddenly discovered that the Tao glow flowing down from the peach tree had disappeared too. The invisible force of the rules had disappeared. Lin Sun tried to approach it, and as expected, there was no obstacle. Although he was extremely tired at the moment, Lin Sun still tried his best to jump on the legendary peach tree. Numerous peaches of immortality that were dazzling like the sun could be seen amidst the verdant and translucent emerald leaves and branches in the surroundings. Some were as red as sunset, some as white as jade, some as blue as glaze, and some were flowing with purple clouds. There were a lot of them. "Thank you, Senior." Lin Sun took a deep breath and saluted. However, no one responded, as if the purple figure really didn't exist. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun picked a peach of immortality that was as white as jade. At the same time, under the peach tree, Ahu, who had closed her eyes and a pale face, fell to the ground as if she had lost her support. Then, her eyelashes trembled, and she slowly opened her eyes as if she had just woken up from a dream. After a while, Ahu realized something. She patted her chest with lingering fear and let out a long breath. "Ahu, you're awake." A laugh sounded. Ahu raised her head and looked at the peach tree with her limpid eyes. She saw Lin Sun standing on a branch. She opened her beautiful eyes wide in surprise. "How did you? I'll explain it to you later. Take it first." Lin Sun smiled as he passed the peach of immortality that resembled green jade to Ahu. "Quickly refine it. Otherwise, your strength will dissipate." Biting her lips, Ahu stared at the peach in her hand in a daze. She was so smart that she had vaguely guessed something. After a while, she smiled happily and waved her hand. "Then I won't stand on ceremony." Her voice was clear and melodious like the sound of nature. Lin Sun smiled as well. At this moment, his entire body was relaxed, and there were no more obstacles in his heart. Then, Lin Sun stood on the peach tree and looked around carefully. The immortality peach tree was too huge. Its branches were dense and thick like numerous wriggling flood dragons. Moreover, the number of immortality peaches condensed on its branches was dazzling. Lin Sun picked 8 peaches of different colors and sizes according to his intuition. He didn't know whether they had different magical effects or not. At this point, Lin Sun jumped off the peach tree and didn't look at the peaches hanging on the branch again. It seemed that he was very decisive. Such supreme fortune was indeed sufficient to make any cultivator go mad with lust. But Lin Sun was very clear that the purple-robed woman wouldn't do it without a reason. It was better for him to stop in time. He didn't want to be involved in any karma because of picking peaches of immortality. At the top of the peach tree that Lin Sun didn't notice, a purple-robed figure was sitting in the clouds with a touch of gratification in her eyes. This was a young man who knew when to stop. If it was that unruly guy, he definitely wouldn't stop. Thinking of this, she couldn't help feeling disappointed. Who was practicing and meditating under the peach tree. Lin Sun looked not far away and saw 2 figures standing there. One was a blue-robed man with an ancient sword on his back, and the other was a woman in a phoenix robe with her long hair tied up in a bun. Lin Sun was not a good person. Not to mention that the 2 of them hadn't revealed the slightest sign of danger up until now. Perhaps they would even be able to overcome the tempering of the dream realm and obtain a supreme fortune. Lin Sun naturally couldn't stop all this. Otherwise, once they woke up and found that the 2 peaches they wanted were picked by Lin Sun, they would definitely cause unnecessary trouble. "Silver, come and protect me." Lin Sun took a deep breath and decided to recover his strength first before thinking about refining the peaches of immortality. The reason was that he didn't know when the blue-robed man and the woman in the phoenix robe would wake up. Whoosh! Silver rushed out and began to protect them. Lin Sun took out some magic herbs and began to meditate. The peach tree stood silently, its branches and leaves glowing with divine light. The invisible power of rules reappeared. Time flowed by, and before he knew it, 5 days had passed. Whoosh! Lin Sun woke up from meditation, full of vigor and light in his eyes. This world was flowing with rich divine vitality, and the aura of the Great Way was amazing. Lin Sun's cultivation had improved a lot even though he had only meditated for 5 days. "If I can meditate here for a while, I'm afraid I can improve to the middle level of the Great Sage realm even without the help of the peaches of immortality," Lin Sun sighed with emotion. He looked to the side and found that Ahu was still practicing and showed no sign of waking up. Not far away, the blue-robed man and the woman in the phoenix robe were also standing there like clay statues. "Silver, this peach is for you." Lin soon took out a peach and handed it to Silver, who had been guarding him. But at this moment something strange happened. Whoosh! A beam of dazzling sword chi suddenly came to Lin soon and chopped towards him. This sudden scene was enough to catch anyone unprepared. It was too fast, and the sword chi was too fierce and terrible. Even Lin soon had no time to dodge, so he had to face it head-on. Boom! Even though he managed to block the sword strike in the end, he was still sent flying. He was in a sorry state. His expression turned cold as he looked over. The blue-robed man with the ancient sword on his back had turned around. His eyes were full of fierceness and a touch of unconcealable passion and greed. "Hand over the peach in your hand, and I'll spare your life," he said in an indisputable tone. Chapter 1809. His voice was solemn. Lin Sun said, "Oh," and threw the peach into the air. Whoosh! The blue-robed man moved in the air and grabbed the peach at an incredible speed. Only what was even faster than him was a broken blade. It was sparkling white like snow as it suddenly arrived. The first cut of Tianyuan. And Lin Sun didn't hold back. Because he was still meditating, Lin Sun didn't dare to hide anything at this critical moment. Clang! A deafening collision rang out. The blue-robed man used his sword to block the slash, but his figure was also shaken and sent flying backward. His face changed slightly. It seemed that he didn't expect that Lin Sun's combat power would be so strong. This was beyond his expectation. When did another great sage appear on the starry sky ancient road? Boom! But Lin Sun didn't talk nonsense at all. He rushed to the blue-robed man with his shining body and matchless bravery. He didn't intend to give the blue-robed man a chance to dodge. In an instant the two collided dozens of times. The ancient sword clanged and the broken sword shot. They fought with each other, tearing the void apart and collapsing. Puff! After a while, the blue-robed man coughed up blood, and a touch of horror appeared on his face. "Who are you?" He was completely shocked. With his combat power, he could be regarded as a top existence in the great sage realm, which was enough to disdain many of his peers. But now, he was injured. Lin Sun didn't say a word. He went all out and looked extremely arrogant and domineering, with amazing killing intent. In fact, he was also quite surprised. It should be known that his cultivation had been improved again, and with the power of the broken sword, his combat power could be improved by about 10%. But under such circumstances, he couldn't kill the opponent immediately. It could be imagined that the opponent was also destined to be a tyrannical figure. "You're courting death." The blue-robed man, who was completely suppressed, looked gloomy and furious. With a clatter, a soft whip wrapped with purple thunder and lightning appeared in his palm. It was as long as 10 meters. He shook it in the void and threw it out fiercely. Crack! The void was smashed like a piece of paper, and the terrible purple thunder and lightning flowed. With a bang, Lin Sun's broken sword was whipped away. This soft whip of thunder and lightning was obviously not comparable to ordinary holy treasures. It was full of horrible destructive breath. It looked soft, but in fact, it was extremely strong and fierce. Crack! Crack! Puff! The blue-clothed man seemed as if he was venting his rage after his attack succeeded, and he swung his whip to attack. He pointed at the heavens and smashed the earth, and he gave rise to a myriad of whip images while surging violet-colored thunderstorms swept out like a torrent. Lin Sun summoned the Tower of Endless Tao without hesitation. Hummed the body of the pagoda that seemed to be constructed from divine gold and glass emanated rays of dark golden light that enveloped the world and suppressed the surroundings. Along with an earth-shattering collision sound, the blue-clothed man's attack was completely suppressed. The purple lightning whip in his hand was extremely profound, but it was completely insufficient before the power of the great Tao bottomless tower. This caused the blue-robed man's expression to change completely. Even the purple thunder whip couldn't do it? He found it hard to believe. It should be known that the purple thunder whip was a world-shaking secret treasure. It was also his greatest trump card. With this treasure, he dared to challenge a king saint. But now it was firmly suppressed by a pagoda. Not long after, the blue-clothed man who had been suppressed once more couldn't hold on any longer. He coughed up blood once more, and he retreated without hesitation, planning to escape. But at this moment Lin Sun suddenly rushed forward, the infinite Great Way bottle in his palm glowing. Boom! The vast sea of sword chi derived from the 33 swords surged out overwhelmingly, drowning the blue-clothed man. But this man's strength was still beyond Lin Sun's expectation. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The blue-clothed man suddenly let out a roar. Above his head, a white bone hand was condensed, crystal-like jade, and its 5 fingers were branded with strange fluctuations of the Great Way. As the white bone hand slapped out, boom! The dense sea of sword chi exploded with a loud bang, transforming into a rolling rain of light that scattered down. The terrible power made Lin Sun's black eyes narrow. This was a bone hand with the breath of the Emperor Tao, full of supreme power. The blue-clothed man took this opportunity to escape, but his body had been torn by the sword chi, riddled with holes and bloody, extremely miserable. He let out a shrill roar like a ghost, hideous and terrible, "I want you to die!" He had never suffered such a big loss since he started his cultivation, nor had he been killed to such an extent, which made him completely furious. Boom! The white bone hand swept up, shining with obscure light. Just its breath made Lin Sun's body stiff and his soul oppressed. However, as the Tower of Endless Way sprinkled with black golden light, the terrible and oppressive breath was also washed away. "Up!" Lin Sun shouted, and the killing intent in his eyes became more and more intense. The Tower of Endless Way exuded vast and ancient charm. With a roar in the void, it showed a great momentum that could suppress the past, the present and the future. In front of this momentum, the white bone hand was severely restrained, unable to struggle, and even the breath of the Emperor Tao on the hand bone was suppressed. Puff! The blue-clothed man coughed up blood again, as if he had suffered a backfire. He staggered and couldn't stand still. As if he had encountered the most incredible thing in the world, he roared angrily, "It's impossible! How could the hand bone of the evil emperor be suppressed?" Lin Sun didn't care about this. With a wave of his hand, his figure moved, and the broken sword swept up a terrible snow-white torrent and violently chopped down. Puff! The blue-clothed man's body was split open, and blood splashed out like a waterfall. Even at the moment of his death, he still couldn't believe it. It seemed that from the beginning, he had never thought that he would die in the hands of a stranger he had never heard of in front of the peach tree. With a clang, Lin Sun put away the broken sword. Bang! Without the blue-clothed man's control, the white bone hand strangely cracked and exploded, turning into white powder and fluttering in the air. Lin Sun was stunned. How could such a treasure imprinted with the breath of the Emperor Tao just disappear like this? Obviously, the destruction of the treasure had something to do with the death of the blue-clothed man. But Lin Sun didn't bother to guess the reason. He looked at Ahu, who was not far away, and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that she was not disturbed. Then, he looked at the woman in the phoenix robe in the distance. Before Lin Sun said anything, the woman in the phoenix robe had already turned around. She had a pure and white face, with a unique dignified and calm aura. She was very tall, dressed in a scarlet phoenix robe, and her black hair was tied up in a bun. She was extremely beautiful. She looked at Lin Sun with a pair of bright and narrow phoenix eyes and praised, "My friend, you've killed Tu Qingxiong, who ranked 27th on the Starry Sky Great Sage list, in less than a quarter of an hour. If such an achievement is spread out, it's bound to cause a sensation in the world." Lin Sun realized that the blue-clothed man just now was a peerless figure ranked in the top 30 on the Starry Sky Great Sage list. No wonder his battle prowess was so extraordinary. He was indeed much stronger than Yan Chunjun and Luong. "My friend, don't you know Tu Qingxiong? He is a direct descendant of the Blackwater battle clan, one of the top 10 battle clans. His ancestor is the evil Emperor Xuanlu, who was famous in the ancient times. The eyes of the woman in the phoenix robe were shining brilliantly, as if they could see through people's hearts. But Lin Sun looked calm and unperturbed, which made her unable to see any emotional fluctuations. This surprised her a little. Didn't this man know the terrible consequences of killing Tu Qingxiong? He would be regarded as a thorn in the flesh by the Blackwater battle clan and must be eradicated. Unfortunately, she didn't know that Lin Sun was not a practitioner on the Starry Sky ancient path at all. Come to think of it, even if Lin Sun knew it, he would not show any mercy when he killed Tu Qingxiong. It was like this before, and it would be like this in the future. Lin Sun said, "What about you? Who are you?" The woman in the phoenix robe was stunned. She seemed to have guessed something and suddenly said, "It seems that you should come from the 9 regions. This is really unbelievable." Lin Sun didn't deny it. This surprised the woman in the phoenix robe. When did such a ruthless character emerge in the 9 regions? She calmed down and said, "My name is Chunyu Go, and I come from the Emperor Clan Chunyu." The Emperor Clan Chunyu? Lin Sun was unfamiliar with it. He had never heard of it, and he didn't even know how many Emperor clans there were on the Starry Sky ancient path. Not to mention who this Chunyu Go was. Seeing Lin Sun's calm reaction, Chunyu Go felt a little absent-minded. In the past, when cultivators of the same generation saw her, which one of them did not feel nervous and admire her? From this, she was even more certain that the young man in front of her was definitely not from the Starry Sky ancient path. It seems that all the peaches of immortality here have been obtained by you. Chunyu Ji's eyes were a little complicated. She knew very well that the chances of obtaining the peaches of immortality were limited. When someone obtained them in advance, others would end up with nothing even if they went through dreams. It was the same for Tu Qingxiong and her. Lin Sun still did not deny it. He just looked at Chunyu Go quietly. "Forget it. If I stay any longer, I will definitely arouse your hatred and conflict. Since that's the case, I might as well leave now." Chunyu Go also noticed that Lin Sun's attitude towards her was very stiff. Thinking of the scene where Tu Qingxiong was killed, she finally decided to leave. Before leaving, she couldn't help but ask, "My friend, may I know your name?" "Lin Sun." Lin Sun told her his name. Chunyu Go muttered to herself. Then she smiled sweetly and said, "I believe that I will still have a chance to meet you in the Kunlun ruins. Goodbye." After saying that, she floated away. She did not look back, nor did she show any hesitation. She just left casually. It was as if losing a supreme opportunity was nothing to her. Her state of mind was free of worries. From beginning to end, no matter what Lin Sun's attitude was, she did not show any hostility. This surprised Lin Sun. She gave up just like that? After watching Chunyu Ji's figure disappear, and sensing that even her aura had disappeared from the Peach Garden's secret realm, Lin Sun finally confirmed that she had really given up. "This is a woman who doesn't show her strength and I can't see through her," Lin Sun judged. Chapter 1810. Under the peach tree, the peace and tranquility of the past were restored. Lin Sun counted the spoils. As a peerless saint ranked 27th on the Starry Sky Great Saint list, Tu Qingxiong was quite rich. An ancient treasure called Purple Thunder Whip, which had been passed down for a long time, was so powerful that even the broken blade couldn't resist its whip. It could be imagined how extraordinary it was. It was a dark green ancient sword with 19 life inscriptions carved on it. It was obviously Tu Qingxiong's life saint weapon. However, such a life-bonded treasure was of little value in the eyes of other practitioners. It was thrown into the insignificance bow by Lin Sun casually as the rations for the spirit to restore his own vitality. In addition, Tu Qingxiong also carried a lot of magic medicines and treasures, all of which were first class in the world. Lin Sun took all of them for his own use. After doing all this, Lin Sun sat cross-legged and took out a peach of immortality. It was as red as the sunset, crystal clear, flowing with a magnificent rain of light and refreshing fragrance. As soon as he swallowed it, a strange hot current spread all over his body. Lin Sun only felt that his soul was suddenly enlightened and he was about to become an immortal. The power of the peach of immortality was too miraculous, and it was different from divine medicines. It allowed the body and mind of a cultivator to harmonize with the Tao and feel enlightened. Soon, Lin Sun was immersed in a deep level of enlightenment. He sat cross-legged on the ground with a solemn and ethereal look. Every inch of his body was surging with dazzling light of Tao. As he breathed in and out, all kinds of wonderful visions emerged behind his head. There were real dragons roaming, yin and yang, water and fire. There were Tai Chi rotating and big abyss swallowing and spitting. There were also undying ripples that rumbled endlessly. These were all the powers of Tao that Lin Sun had mastered. Later, Lin Sun's essence, Qi and spirit were roaring like a volcanic eruption, and his internal organs produced a wonderful rhythm, clanging like gold and jade. Looking from a distance, his figure was like a furnace of heaven and earth, vast and boundless, boiling and operating, containing all the mysteries of Tao and developing all the mysteries. Only a few hours later, with the earth-shattering roar, the whole world was shaking. Divine vitality surged from all directions and poured into Lin Sun's body continuously. His body was like a bottomless abyss, crazily and greedily swallowing and refining. This scene was very shocking. Looking down from the sky, the peach blossom forest all over the secret realm of peach was swaying and emitting divine vitality, all rushing to the place where Lin Sun was. If it was any other cultivator in Chen Shi's place, that cultivator would be utterly unable to endure such powerful and surging energy, let alone refine and absorb it. But Lin Sun didn't notice it at all. His figure was like a furnace that embraced the power of all directions, and there was nothing that he couldn't contain and nothing that he couldn't refine. The most miraculous part was that a completely different scene appeared in Lin Sun's heart. Numerous unbelievable profundities of the Grand Tao surged into appearance, and it caused him to fall into a deep level of comprehension. It was mysterious and indescribable. In just 2 days, boom! Lin Sun's boiling qi suddenly broke through at this moment, as if he had broken a natural moat barrier, and entered the middle realm of the great sage. His whole body shone brightly, and his qi surged like smoke, rising up, shattering the clouds in all directions and shaking the stars in the sky. And all this was not over. The magical power brought by the power of the peach of immortality kept Lin Sun still immersed in that strange state of comprehension. It was not only the improvement of his cultivation, but also his comprehension of the Grand Tao, his understanding of his own Dharma, and his comprehension of the endless devouring scripture, all of them also rose along with it. 3 days later, a furnace that seemed to be solid appeared above Lin Sun's head. The surface of the furnace was branded with all kinds of wonderful dharma. There was Taishien's sword sutra deducing the sword qi, covering all directions. There was a divine man waving his fists, shaking the heaven and earth. There was a real dragon roaring and transforming into 9 changes. There was a boundless finger power, expounding the mystery of space. The furnace seethed and glowed, and every single one of the Tao techniques within it revealed an obvious transformation. The first transformation was Taishien's sword qi. The 33 layers of sword qi evolved into 72 mountains of sword qi, each of which was formed by the accumulation of 3,800 Taishien's sword qi. There were 72 earthly evil spirits, so it was called Earthly Evil Sword Mountain. Then, the mystery of the fist of shaking the sky was completely melted and turned into a kind of mystery of the Great Way Furnace scripture. At this point, when Lin Sun ran the Great Way Furnace scripture, its power had the momentum of shaking the heaven and earth. Then, the 9 changes of the real dragon transformed into the symbol of tribulation, which was branded on the furnace scripture. Like the fist of shaking the sky, its mystery was integrated into the Great Way Furnace scripture, which added a kind of change. What was change? Like a dragon, it could be big or small, it could rise or hide. When it was big, it could make clouds and fog. When it was small, it could hide. When it was small, it could hide. When it rose, it could roam all the heavens, and when it hid, it could lurk in the abyss. The 9 changes of the real dragon was originally the forbidden secret of the real dragon. Now Lin soon integrated all its mystery into his own cultivation method, just like the fist of shaking the sky. Later, the mystery of the first cut of Tianyuan was also melted, which added a kind of sharpness to the Great Way Furnace scripture. It was incomparably fierce and invincible. When Lin soon ran the Great Way Furnace scripture and controlled the broken blade to perform the first cut of Tianyuan, he could integrate the mystery of the real dragon's change and the momentum of shaking the heaven and earth at will. Naturally, its power was much more powerful than before. But in the end, Lin soon failed to integrate the mystery of the void-breaking finger of Dian and the Taixien sword scripture into his own cultivation method. The Taixien sword scripture was very special. This cultivation method was left by the first sword emperor in primitive times. It was the real sword scripture of Emperor Path, a supreme method. If Lin Sun wanted to integrate it into his own cultivation method, he would have to reach the Emperor realm. The void-breaking finger of Dian seemed to have only 3 moves, but it involved the extremely mysterious and obscure power of the law of space. For Lin Sun now, he still couldn't understand its mystery. But even so, after this transformation, the Great Way Furnace scripture had been further perfected, and the mystery and power it contained were at least twice as strong as before. Moreover, as Lin Sun integrated more cultivation methods in the future, the power and mystery of the Great Way Furnace scripture would be stronger. This was Lin Sun's own cultivation method. From the moment it was created, it was destined to be the only cultivation method in the whole world. 7 days later, Lin Sun woke up from a deep level of enlightenment. His eyes were clear and clean, like the clearest spring water in the world, but they could reflect the sky and see through all things. Tao runes flowed around him, making him free from dust and dirt, ethereal and transcendent. From the appearance alone, it was difficult for anyone to see through him unless he had a realm and power far beyond Lin Sun's. This was called, the body is like an abyss, and the momentum is empty, hiding the elephant in the invisible. Lin Sun's mind was clear and unprecedentedly clear. In an instant, he sensed the various transformations of his own strength. In terms of cultivation, he had reached the peak of the middle stage of the Great Sage realm. He had integrated spirit, qi, and body refining into one furnace. In terms of enlightenment, all the power of the Great Way had been condensed into the Great Sage Law, and further tempered, becoming more and more vigorous and pure. What was different from the past was that his understanding of the mystery of space had been promoted from the initial level to the entry level. In the cultivation of martial arts, there were also various transformations. Feeling the series of changes in his mind, Lin Sun sighed as if he had not fully understood it yet. For others, a peach of immortality can be equivalent to 100 years of hard work, but for me, it can only be equivalent to 10 years of hard work at most. Lin Sun also knew that this was probably because his cultivation foundation was too strong. Of course, 100 years of hard work for ordinary people was different from his own. This was a relative concept. However, Lin Sun was not reconciled. In other words, it had shocked and surprised Lin Sun to be able to achieve the progress of 10 years of hard work in less than 7 days. Cultivation was never about the faster the better, but whether the foundation tempered in this realm was strong and solid in the pursuit of Tao. This was the core of cultivation, and also determined the achievements of each practitioner in the future. In fact, from the beginning of Lin Sun's cultivation to the present, he had set foot on the Great Sage realm in less than 100 years. This speed of cultivation could be regarded as shocking. Even on the starry ancient road, he could be regarded as a peerless genius. Of course, Lin Sun's cultivation path had never been about speed, but about being invincible and unparalleled in the past and the present. With my current strength, it's a piece of cake for me to kill people like Yen Chunjun. There was a touch of confidence in Lin Sun's black eyes. This was an invincible and disdainful demeanor. Now he just wanted to have a try to see how many moves Sha Luqing could resist. Congratulations, Brother Lin. You have made a further progress in Tao. A clear and melodious voice sounded beside him. A Hu, dressed in a yellow dress, looked at Lin Sun with a smile. At this moment, her eyes were watery, her lips were moist, her skin was jade white, her figure was graceful, and she glowed with a shocking expression. Every frown and smile of hers carried the grace to charm all living beings and overturn the world. When she didn't smile, she was like a fairy. The two temperaments blended together, producing a kind of beauty that made the world dim. Same to you. Lin Sun smiled. He had seen that Ahu's strength had undergone an amazing transformation after swallowing a peach. Both of them couldn't help laughing. This trip to the secret realm of Peachland had made them quite amazing gains. Now it was time to leave. After a short talk, they decided to set off immediately. The secret realm of Peachland was just one of the many places of opportunity in the Kunlun ruins, so they would not spend all their time here. Before leaving, Lin Sun suddenly remembered something. He immediately took out a spear and stabbed it into the ground under his feet. Clang! Unexpectedly, the ground was extremely hard, comparable to the hardest divine iron in the world. It made Lin Sun's thumb and forefinger numb, and the spear in his hand buzzed incessantly. What are you going to do? Ahu was stunned. Dig some 5-colored wonderful soil and take it back to plant trees. Lin Sun said casually. He frowned a little because he didn't expect the ground to be so hard. After thinking about it, Lin Sun tried several times, but he failed. The hardness of the soil here made him feel incredible. Chapter 18:11. He wanted to cut down the peach tree for firewood, and now you want to take away the 5-colored wonderful soil to plant a tree. Are all the successors of Mind Mountain so unreasonable? There was a hint of helplessness and a hint of a smile in his voice, as if he felt that Lin Sun's action was quite similar to that person's. Lin Sun was embarrassed. He didn't expect that the purple figure didn't disappear completely, but had seen his every move. Take it. The next moment, a piece of soil the size of a cattail leaf fan swept out from the ground. It was suffused with green, gold, white, red, and black divine brilliance. Visible divine vitality fell down like rolling mist. It was extremely magical. Thank you, Senior. Lin Sun was overjoyed. He quickly took over the Fusang divine tree, which had shrunk countless times and was now only the size of a palm, and planted it neatly. Whoosh! The fiery red leaves of the Fusang immortal tree rolled with joy and excitement, radiating unprecedented spirituality. Lin Sun carefully put away the Fusang immortal tree and the 5-colored wonderful soil. Then, he bowed slightly to the peach tree and left with Ahu. Someone seemed to be chatting with you just now? Yes, a senior with a very mysterious background. He has some connections with a senior brother in Mount Innerheart. I see. No wonder you can climb up the peach tree. Climb? You mean I'm like a monkey? Haha, you said it yourself. As they talked, they walked side by side through the peach forest that covered the mountains and fields, and their figures gradually faded away. At the top of the peach tree, amidst the sea of clouds, the purple figure quietly watched the two young people leave like a wisp of rosy cloud. He has mastered the Tower of Endless Tao and inherited the fighting saint method you left, but he doesn't even know who I am. But I know that he is your little junior brother. One day, he will definitely be like you, stepping on the spirit cloud continent and shaking the heavens. The purple figure couldn't help but smile when she thought of this. Before leaving the secret realm of Peach Garden, Ahu suddenly stopped and said, "Don't be so reckless in the future. Then, she winked at Lin Sun mischievously and walked into the door that led to the outside world. Her yellow dress fluttered in the wind, graceful and ethereal, just like her. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment. Then he shook his head with a smile and stepped into the door. Accompanied by a strange rumble, the peach blossom mystic realm fell silent. Lin Sun and the others had only been in the Peach Garden secret land for slightly more than 10 days, but too many turbulent and bloody things had happened in the Kunlun ruins. As one of the 4 great divine ruins of the ancient era, there were countless fortuitous encounters hidden within the Kunlun ruins. In the past few days, bloody conflicts had occurred almost constantly in the vicinity of some of the fortuitous encounters. Countless experts had fallen and died with grievances. In the end, only a small portion of people would be able to obtain fortune. When Lin Sun and who walked out of the forest called Insect Nest of Immortal Ancient, they heard a sensational rumor. A world-shocking battle has taken place on Mount Imperial Dragon. Heroes are fighting fiercely, dyeing the sky red. Rumor has it that the Imperial Dragon Mountain is one of the Kunlun ancient ruins' 9 great secret grounds. Whoever can ascend to the top will have the foundation to become a martial emperor. How terrifying! Peak great sages fell like rain on Mount Imperial Dragon. When this news came out, everyone was shocked. Like a storm, it swept through the Kunlun ancient ruins. All the cultivators who were scattered in other areas to compete for the fortuitous encounters were shocked. Then, another news came out. Someone with a flying immortal token climbed to the top of Mount Imperial Dragon and disappeared into the mysterious forbidden area. For a time, the Kunlun ancient ruins became more and more turbulent. Mount Imperial Dragon had become the focus of all the cultivators. The foundation to become a martial emperor. This kind of supreme fortune was enough to make any saint go crazy. In the outside world, it would even cause a bloody battle between the great orthodoxies, because it was really too difficult to become a martial emperor. There might not even be a martial emperor in tens of thousands of years. If one could have the foundation to become a martial emperor, he would definitely have the opportunity to become a martial emperor in the future. It seemed to be just an opportunity, but in fact it was because of such an opportunity that it had stopped the road of great emperor from becoming a martial emperor. For example, there were many quasi-emperors and half-step martial emperors in the world today. They had lived for countless years, but very few of them had truly stepped into the martial emperor realm. Why? Because they lacked such an opportunity. Therefore, when they found out that the fortune that appeared on Mount Imperial Dragon was related to the foundation to become a martial emperor, it was easy to imagine how great the sensation was. Both Lin Sun and who heard it and couldn't help but be moved. Someone climbed to the top of Mount Imperial Dragon with a flying immortal token. Could it be one of Xiaohao or Ruowu? Lin Sun's heart moved. Shall we go and have a look? Asked Hu. Heroes gather there and blood flows like a river. It has long become the most eye-catching place in the Kunlun ancient ruins. If we go there now, it must be extremely dangerous. Lin Sun was a little hesitant. He was not afraid, but he thought that it was a step too late to act now. If he lost the opportunity to climb to the top of Mount Imperial Dragon, the disadvantages would outweigh the advantages. Ahu said thoughtfully, "In my opinion, the commotion at Mount Imperial Dragon this time might not really have anything to do with the foundation of becoming emperor. Most of the time, what you hear is false, and what you see is true." Lin Sun was surprised. "What do you mean?" Who said, "Mount Imperial Dragon is one of the famous 9 secrets in the Kunlun ancient ruins. In the past years, it has been explored by many strong people, but I have never heard of anyone who has built the foundation to become a martial emperor there." "You suspect it's fake news?" Lin Sun was stunned. "It's hard to say." Who said, "Haven't you heard it? Someone with a flying immortal token has climbed to the top of Mount Imperial Dragon and entered a mysterious forbidden area." Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. Could it be that someone released the news to lure the strong people with flying immortal token to Mount Imperial Dragon? Ahu was startled. Then, he said, what you said is possible. After all, in this Kunlun realm, whoever possesses the flying immortal token is equivalent to obtaining a trump card to explore the dangerous forbidden lands. Anyone would be jealous of it. Lin Sun had a bad feeling in his heart. If what I guessed is true, the news from Mount Imperial Dragon is actually a trap to lure the people with flying immortal token to go there. Speaking of this, Lin Sun's eyes flashed with a touch of determination. No, I have to go there myself to see if it's true. Who frowned and said, if it's really a trap, won't you be walking right into it? Lin Sun shook his head. I'm not afraid of that. I'm worried about those friends who entered the Kunlun ruins with flying immortal tokens like me. If they're attracted by the news and head to Mount Imperial Dragon to search for the fortune related to becoming an emperor, it'll be too dangerous. Who immediately understood and said, then I'll go with you. All right. The two of them immediately took action. It was easy to find out the location of Mount Imperial Dragon. Currently, the Kunlun ruins were filled with news about this place. Everyone, take a look. What a divine golden-winged rock. This should be a pure-blooded rock, right? However, it was actually trampled on by Gu Tsangxin and is riddled with injuries. This is news that just came from Mount Imperial Dragon. It said that the golden-winged rock planned to secretly ascend to the top with the flying immortal token, but it was suppressed by Gu Tsangxin in one fell swoop. On the way, Lin Sun noticed a group of cultivators gathered together. One of them was holding a smooth bronze mirror and was discussing something. Golden-winged rock? Lin Sun's heart tightened. He spread out his divine consciousness and immediately noticed a scene being reflected on the bronze mirror. Gu Tsangxin, who was dressed in a black robe, stood on a rock with a cold expression. He was stepping on a golden-winged rock that was riddled with injuries. Its wings were broken and blood was flowing. Lin Sun's pupils constricted. It looked extremely similar to the young golden-winged rock king. Is it really a trap? Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat. The young golden-winged rock king was actually suppressed by Gu Tsangxin? What about Xiaohao, Ruowu, and the others? Had they encountered misfortune as well? Suddenly, Lin Sun's body trembled. He noticed a broken iron rod not far from the young golden-winged rock king. Yuan Fatian. Lin Sun remembered that the iron rod was Yuan Fatian's treasure, but it was now broken. Lin Sun clearly remembered that Yuan Fatian and the young golden-winged rock king had the best relationship. Now that one of them was suppressed and the other's weapon was broken, they must have encountered something terrifying. A touch of anxiety surged in Lin Sun's heart. He was almost sure that the so-called news on Mount Yulong must be a trap to lure those who held the flying immortal token to go there. Lin Sun couldn't wait any longer. He rushed to Mount Yulong with Ahu at full speed. In those days, the young golden-winged rock king, Yuan Fatian, Xiaohao, Ruowu, and the others all fought side by side with him. They fought bloody enemies on the 9-region battlefield and defended the city of Tao Protection in the ancient Desolation realm. They drank, discussed, and laughed together. They had been friends for life and death. Now that they had encountered misfortune and been humiliated, how could Lin Sun not be anxious and angry? These bastards, do they really think that I dare not kill them? Lin Sun's black eyes were terrifyingly cold. Mount Yulong was covered with snow all year round. The mountain was very large, rising from the ground and stretching majestically. The mountain was covered with fog. In these past few days, blood had been shed here without end, and incomparably intense conflicts had erupted. This was all because there was a rumor that the peak of Mount Imperial Dragon contained a supreme fortuitous encounter related to the resources of becoming an emperor. It caused a storm to gather here, and it drew the attention of countless experts. However, this mountain deserved to be the holy mountain in the Kunlun ruins. No matter how fierce the conflicts were, the mountain was as solid as iron and had never been damaged or collapsed. but most of the white snow on the mountain had been dyed red by blood. When Lin Sun and Hu approached this area, they unexpectedly found that many practitioners turned back from the direction of Mount Yulong. Some were depressed, some looked gloomy, and some were full of resentment and hatred. Chapter 18:12. How vast and majestic was Mount Yulong? How could it be sealed so easily? Lin Sun quickly found out that the only path that could lead to the peak of Mount Yulong was sealed. This path was called the Dragon Subduing Path, and it was covered in a forbidden spatial energy. No matter what cultivation base one had, they could only climb it on foot. It was impossible to approach the peak of Mount Yulong from any other position. After understanding all of this, Lin Sun's heart sank. He could foresee that if there were a group of powerhouses with ill intentions waiting on this dragon-subduing path, like Imperial Prince Xiaohao and Ruo Wu, they would definitely be attacked at the first possible moment. Damn it! The successors of those great powers are simply too overbearing. Anyone who tries to get close will be killed. They don't intend to give anyone a chance at all. Some people were furious and complained incessantly. Haven't you heard? Only those with the Flying Immortal token are allowed to enter. The most important thing now is to hunt down those powerhouses from the ancient Desolation domain. Only they have the Flying Immortal token. That's right. As long as you have the Flying Immortal token, not only can you enter Mount Yulong, but it won't be difficult for you to head to other forbidden places in the Kunlun ruins. Many cultivators were discussing. Lin Sun remained silent, and the aura around him became calmer. He did not attract anyone's attention as he continued forward with Hu. After hearing the discussions of those people, he was even more certain that Mount Yulong was a tiger's den that was filled with killing intent. For example, the young golden-winged Rock King and Yuan Fatian had already stepped into the Great Saint stage a long time ago, and their talent and strength were extremely shocking. However, both of them might have already suffered. This caused killing intent to surge in Lin Sun's heart. In order to obtain the Flying Immortal token, those fellows were truly unscrupulous. Not long after, Lin Sun saw the dragon subduing path from afar. The path stretched from the bottom to the top like a winding dragon that stretched into the sky. The dragon's head was at the peak of Mount Yulong. Without the Flying Immortal token, you still want to reach the peak of Mount Yulong? Wishful thinking. If you don't want to die, then leave quickly. On the dragon subduing path at the foot of the mountain, a cold voice sounded. It was a man in a dark green robe and holding a bronze spear. He had an extremely capable and terrifying bearing. He stood before the dragon subduing path like a man guarding the pass, ostentatious and cold. There were many cultivators gathered in the vicinity, and it was extremely unsightly for them to be reprimanded and expelled in such a manner. Through their conversation, Lin Sun also learned that the vigorous man was called Niefu. He came from the primitive Taoist court and was an extremely powerful peerless great saint. In these past few days, many experts had tried to enter this place by force, yet all of them were annihilated by Niefu. Niefu's methods were brutal, bloody, and horrifying. Boring. You don't have the guts to force your way in, yet you're unwilling to leave. Trash like you want to get a share of this opportunity? Don't you feel ashamed? Niefu did not hide his mockery. The faces of many experts nearby darkened. Some of them couldn't help but want to barge in, but they were stopped by their companions. Can't you tell? He's provoking you on purpose to send you to your death. As soon as these words were spoken, it instantly dispelled that person's intention to force his way through. Niefu seemed to feel extremely bored when he saw this, and he said lazily, "Cowards, truly fucking cowards. If I were all of you, I would have slit my throat and committed suicide a long time ago so as to avoid living in this world and making a fool of myself. Alright, Niefu, go to the top of the mountain. Your senior brother Koen is looking for you. I'll take care of this place." A slender, seemingly fragile girl in a red robe appeared. Niefu nodded, then carried his bronze spear and climbed up the mountain, disappearing from sight. Tao Yao. Some people were shocked, and it caused a commotion. Many people kept quiet out of fear, and many people's expressions even changed. They left quietly as if they didn't dare to stay any longer. Because this seemingly delicate red-robed young girl was even more ferocious than Ye Fu. She was a pure blood of the Taowu battle clan. She had a perverse temperament and killed people like flies. Ye Fu would deliberately provoke her before killing, but she wouldn't. To her, killing completely depended on her mood. Tao Yao stood alone in front of the mountain path. Her small face was round, her mouth was rosy, and her eyes were clear and childish. She looked like an immature young girl. However, no one dared to look her in the eyes. Get lost. She spoke a single word, but it made many experts present feel as if they had suffered a great calamity. They turned around and left without daring to stay at all. But some people were unwilling. Puff! Tao Yao's figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, she appeared in front of a strong man. She stretched out her hand and took off a bloody head. Until Tao Yao's figure returned to the mountain path, the headless corpse fell to the ground with a loud bang. Crack! Tao Yao exerted force, and the head in her palm exploded. Blood splashed everywhere. She showed a sweet smile. The weak can only be slaughtered. Does anyone else want to have a try? Many people were so shocked that their scalps were numb, and they felt cold all over. It was too cruel. Killing without a word. Soon, many experts retreated, not daring to stay. Lin Sun watched all this calmly. When he was about to step forward, he was stopped by a who transmitted a voice to him. Have you ever thought that the trap on the Hidden Dragon Mountain is actually aimed at you alone? Lin Sun was shocked. Blocking the mountain path and gathering the descendants of Wilderness Taoist Court, Qiankuan Taoist Court, Taowu Battle Clan, Blood Kailan Battle Clan, and other forces. Other cultivators are not allowed to approach, but only those with the Feishian token are allowed to climb the mountain. Hu said quickly, if it's just for fighting for the foundation to become an emperor, it's too strange to set up such a formation. More importantly, the heirs of these great powers all bear a great grudge against you. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. You mean, from the beginning, this killing trap on the Yulong Mountain was prepared for me? Hu nodded, looked up at the winding dragon crouching path not far away, and transmitted a voice. If there is really a chance to become an emperor at the top of this mountain, why don't I see some other powerful figures? Such as Wen Qingxue and Hua Xingli? If they come, who can block the mountain path? Lin Sun was silent for a moment and said calmly, even if it's a killing trap, if I don't show up, won't I let those guys down? Hu, don't expose yourself. Just follow me secretly. Lin Sun made a decision. Hu sighed in his heart. Was it reckless and arrogant to insist on going, knowing that there was a killing trap in front of him? No. It was just for the friends he cared about. How many times have I said that this mountain path is only open to those with the Flying Immortals token? I ask you again, does anyone have this token? Tao Yao's voice resounded in the field. Many people secretly cursed that even if someone had the Flying Immortals token, who would dare to show up in such a situation? They would have slipped away long ago. But at this moment, Lin Sun moved forward alone, his black eyes clear and calm, and went directly to the dragon crouching path. Lin Sun! Oh my God, this guy showed up! Suddenly, there was a cry of surprise in the nearby area. A young man from the ancient Desolation realm killed Yen Chunjun, Lu Ong, and others one after another. As early as in the treasure refining place, he had been notorious. Who didn't know him? You really came. Tao Yao's eyes were full of frightening light, and her red robe was fluttering without wind. She waved her sleeve, and a scarlet sword case opened, and a sword light flashed out. Crack! The scarlet sword chi was like a bloody rainbow, so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. It was like a peerless, ominous sword flying across the sky to destroy the world. Many people were terrified, and their faces changed. This was an extremely terrible secret treasure inherited from the Taowu fighting clan, with monstrous killing power. In the past few days, countless peerless great saints had been killed by this sword with a single strike. Obviously, Tao Yao also knew how terrible Lin Sun's combat power was. As soon as she made a move, she didn't think of confronting Lin Sun head-on at all, and directly used the strongest means. Lin Sun walked forward as if he didn't notice it. When the scarlet sword Qi came, he raised his hand and grabbed it lightly, as if he was picking flowers with his fingers. In the next moment, the fierce, ferocious, overbearing, and terrifying wisp of sword Qi was grabbed in his palm. It was like a dead snake being pinched at its weak point. What? Tao Yao was shocked. The sword Qi in this sword case had been cultivated by the old monster of the Taowu bloodline for 8,000 years. Its sword intent and killing power were strong enough to easily kill a great saint. But she didn't expect that Lin Sun could resolve it as soon as he raised his hand. Bang! The scarlet sword Qi exploded in Lin Sun's palm. In the rain of light, Lin Sun's figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, he appeared in front of the mountain road. Tao Yao's face changed. Although she was also a great saint with extraordinary combat power, she didn't dare to fight against Lin Sun. Without hesitation, she took out a round bloody shield to protect herself. The shield was flowing with mysterious bloody light patterns, which was mysterious and unpredictable. Tao Yao turned around and rushed up the mountain road. Boom! Lin Sun ran the Great Way Furnace scripture and punched through the bloody shield. With a bang, it burst into pieces like a piece of paper. Tao Yao screamed, and her heart trembled. It was terrible. The shield was also a powerful holy treasure, but it was smashed by Lin Sun's punch. How terrible was Lin Sun's combat power? Don't you want the fairy token? Why are you running away? A cold and indifferent voice sounded. Lin Sun's figure suddenly appeared at an incredible speed, and he punched again. Lin Sun smashed down like an ancient mountain. Tao Yao couldn't avoid it. Her hands glowed, and she resisted with all her strength. However, the power contained in Lin Sun's punch was peerlessly horrible. In an instant Tao Yao's arms were shattered, and the fist force poured out. Her whole body was suppressed, and she was smashed on the hard steps of the mountain road. Blood splashed everywhere. No one knew how many bones in her thin and delicate body were broken. One punch. There was an exclamation in the distance. Everyone was shocked. A pure-blood descendant of the dignified Taowu tribe, a powerful master who killed without blinking, was punched to the ground by Lin Sun. Ah! Tao Yao screamed. Her hair was disheveled, and her body was bathed in blood. She couldn't get up from the steps. Bang! Lin Sun stepped on Tao Yao's body and went up to the dragon-subduing path. His figure was majestic, like a demon. In the same place, Tao Yao's body exploded completely, and blood splashed everywhere. When her soul drifted, it was quietly devoured by Little Silver, who appeared beside her. Thanks to Brother Bandit's reward. Brother Bandit is a famous reader of Zhongheng. I've heard of him for a long time. I didn't expect that he was also reading Tianjiao. Chapter 1813. Tao Yao was killed with one punch, and the smell of blood made everyone tremble. Everyone felt a monstrous killing intent from Lin Sun, and they couldn't help but have a strong premonition. Lin Sun didn't care about the foundation of becoming an emperor at all. He was here to kill. Let's go, follow him. An earth-shattering battle is about to break out. At this moment, the cultivators nearby all returned, shouting excitedly, and their blood was boiling. Before, both Niefu and Tao Yao were extremely overbearing and domineering. Lin Sun's attack made them feel refreshed and relieved. When they saw Lin Sun kill his way up the dragon-subduing path, many people followed him without hesitation. Everyone knew that Lin Sun's appearance was bound to set off a bloody storm on Mount Yulong. As soon as he set foot on the dragon-subduing path, Lin Sun immediately felt that the space was full of taboo rules, and he couldn't teleport at all. Moreover, this winding path seemed to be only a few meters wide, but it gave people a feeling that it was boundless. Superposition space? Lin Sun experienced it as he walked. Who? Suddenly, there was a shout on the path. This place has been blocked, get down the mountain. Lin Sun reached out his hand and grabbed. Boom. The void tumbled like a tide, and a figure was grabbed out of a rock dozens of meters away like a chick. This was also a ruthless figure of the Blood Kylan battle clan, but his body was crushed before he could struggle, and blood poured down like a waterfall. Lin Sun continued up the mountain without looking back. Many cultivators following Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp when they saw this. This was too overbearing, and this kind of combat power was too shocking. Master, I've found out that the young golden-winged Rock King and Yuan Fatian appeared here 3 days ago. The former was suppressed by Gu Zongxin, and the latter by Kuan Jilin, Little Silver said in Lin Sun's ear. Little Silver whispered in Lin's ear. He had just devoured some of Tao Yao's remnant souls and obtained some valuable information. However, they were not killed. They said that they wanted to use their lives to force you to surrender. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. So, they really set up a trap here to target me? Little Silver nodded and told Lin Sun some more information. At the peak of Mount Yulong, there were many tyrannical figures gathered. They were all from the Antiquity Dao Court, Heaven and Earth Dao Court, Blood Qilin War Race, Swanee War Race, and other great powers. The most direct purpose of their layout here was to kill Lin Sun and seize the Flying Immortal Token. Among these powerful figures, there were familiar names such as Tao Jianxing, Gu Zongxin, Kuan Jilin, etc. Many of them were top and dazzling figures amongst the great saints, and it could be said that experts were as numerous as trees in a forest. The gathering of such a force was sufficient to make any cultivator tremble in fear. Right, in the memories of Tao Yao's soul, there were indeed people who ascended the peak of the mountain with the Flying Immortal Token and entered the mysterious forbidden area. Moreover, there were more than one of them. Little Silver said quickly, with the Flying Immortal Tokens they seized from Golden-Winged Rock King and the others, some experts who came with Gu Zongxin have already charged into that mysterious forbidden area. I understand. The killing intent surged in Lin's heart. Not long after, another figure appeared on the mountain path. He wore a dark green robe and held a bronze spear in his hand. His expression was cold. It was Nie Fu who had just left the foot of the mountain. Lin Sun, you? Nie Fu was stunned at first, and then his pupils shrank sharply. Without hesitation, he turned around and was about to rush to the top of the mountain. Realizing that something was wrong, he was going to deliver the message. Puff! The broken blade suddenly swept out and flashed in the void like a streamer. Nie Fu's legs were cut off, and his upper body was smashed on the mountain path with a muffled groan and painful cry. At the beginning, at the foot of the mountain, Nie Fu regarded all the heroes as nothing. He ridiculed and provoked them wantonly, and no one dared to fight against him. But now, he was seriously injured and his legs were cut off with only one strike. The bloody scene caused all the cultivators that followed behind Lin Sun to be astounded. Lin Sun seems to be even more terrifying than the rumors say. This time, Lin Sun didn't kill Nie Fu. He took out a silver rope, tied Nie Fu's body, and dragged him on the ground. It was like dragging a dying animal. Many people were frightened. Nie Fu was the successor of the primitive Taoist court. Who dared to humiliate him like this on the starry ancient path? But Lin Sun did it without blinking his eyes. Whoosh! A gray arrow shot from the front of the mountain path at an incredible speed, tearing a straight crack in the void. Lin Sun didn't even look at it. He raised his hand, grabbed, and threw the arrow in the direction from which it came at a faster speed. Puff! The dull sound of flesh being pierced rang out and someone screamed. There was a man in brocade clothes, whose chest had been pierced. His face was pale, and his body was twitching in a pool of blood. Lin Sun didn't hesitate to tie the man up and strung him on the same rope as Nie Fu. Lin soon dragged him forward. They went up the stone steps. The two preys were dragged, and their bodies collided with the stone steps from time to time. Although they didn't cause any real harm, they looked extremely humiliated and embarrassed. They screamed, roared, and cursed, but it didn't help. Lin Sun, who was walking in front, didn't even look back. Soon, more enemies appeared on the mountain path. There were more than 10 of them, both men and women, and all of them were powerful and far more powerful than ordinary cultivators. When the cultivators who followed Lin Sun saw this, they thought Lin Sun would encounter trouble, but they were stunned in the next moment. Lin Sun stepped forward, and thousands of blazing, vast, and fierce sword chi suddenly rushed out of his body. They were dense and condensed into mountains of sword chi, and then they smashed down. Earth Demon Sword Mountain! Boom! 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 An earth-shattering roar resounded. More than 10 men and women also realized the danger, and they took out their secret treasures and exerted their Taoist skills to attack with all their strength. But all their efforts were in vain. Every mountain of sword chi was unimaginably heavy, and it was full of unparalleled killing intent and imprinted with Taishian sword spirit. Treasures and Dao techniques were like bubbles that couldn't withstand a single blow, and they were completely crushed and dispersed in space. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 men and women were also suppressed. Their bodies were covered with cuts and bruises, dripping with blood, and shocking sword marks crisscrossed on them. All the people present were stunned. In a one-on-one battle, Lin Sun killed them as easily as slaughtering chickens, and this was terrifying. Yet now, under the circumstances that he was fighting many by himself, Lin Sun still suppressed all of them with a single strike. His all-powerful and invincible demeanor had completely exceeded the imagination of everyone. Without exception, all these suppressed experts were tied up one by one, and they were dragged behind Lin Sun like grasshoppers on a rope. Bang! 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 Their bodies collided with the stone steps, and the muffled sound was like a horrifying blood-colored note that sent chills down one's spine. He wants to shed all pretenses of cordiality with the heirs of those great powers. Someone cried out in shock. Who dares to treat the heirs of those great powers like he does on the ancient path of the starry sky? Those cultivators who followed behind Lin Sun had originally come to watch the show, but now all of them were shocked to the point their scalps went numb, and their emotions fluctuated. Lin Sun was too ruthless and fearless, and they didn't dare imagine it. Mount Yulong was extremely lofty, and the mountain path was as long as a dragon. Because flying and teleportation were impossible, the speed of ascending the steps was comparatively much slower. However, no one would feel bored or tormented, because along the way, Lin Sun was like a sharp awl, rushing forward all the way, tearing through the checkpoints controlled by the enemy one after another. In the following time, the number of prey on the rope in Lin Sun's hand gradually increased. No matter men or women, whether they were the heirs of the primitive Taoist court, the Qiankuan Taoist court, or the descendants of the Blood Kailan battle clan or the Taowu battle clan, they were all suppressed. No one was Lin Sun's opponent, and no one could stop Lin Sun from climbing the mountain. Along the way, the stone steps were also stained with blood. From beginning to end, Lin Sun looked indifferent, as if he was taking a stroll in the courtyard, and his mood didn't fluctuate at all. No one knew how angry he was when he was sure that this trap in Hidden Dragon Mountain was aimed at him. Did they think that Lin Sun didn't dare to kill? Then today, he would kill to his heart's content. Halfway up the mountain, a green pine stood in the white snow. A group of men and women gathered and sat on the ground, boiling snow and tea, drinking and chatting with each other. The one in the lead was a young man with long hair that hung loosely over his shoulders. He tasted the tea and said with a smile, "This trap was set up for Lin Sun, but I didn't expect to catch 2 prey with the same flying immortal token. It's a pleasant surprise." Others couldn't help laughing. It's said that these 2 prey have a close relationship with Lin Sun. I wonder if Lin Sun can't help coming to help when he hears of this. Someone said thoughtfully, I hope he comes. Someone's eyes were cold. This man is rampant and cruel. He killed Senior Yen Chunjun. If we don't avenge him, the descendants of Qiankuan Taoism court will be laughed at to death. The lazy young man was about to say something, but his face suddenly changed. At the same time, a dull and dense crashing sound came from the mountain road far below. Many people were stunned. He's coming. The lazy look of the leading young man faded, and his expression became dignified. Who? Lin Sun. What? The group of men and women who were boiling snow and tea all stood up suddenly, showing a look of disbelief. Did that guy really come? It seemed very funny. It should be known that they set up this trap to deal with Lin Sun. But now that Lin Sun really came, they couldn't believe it. It seemed that they didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so bold and fearless. Then, in the perception of their spiritual awareness, they all saw a bloody and cruel picture, which made them all widen their eyes as if they were struck by lightning. On the misty ancient mountain road, a young man in moon-white clothes went up the steps, like a traveler who climbed the mountain to seek seclusion, with a leisurely manner. But behind him, there was a rope winding around the stone steps. Many bloody bodies were tied to the rope like grasshoppers. There were dozens of them. Chapter 1814. One man, dragging a string of bloody prey, climbed up the mountain. The bloody scene made the successors of the Universe Taoist court standing on the mountainside change their expressions. This child actually appeared in such a brutal manner. This was something they hadn't expected at all. Go and inform Senior Gu Zongxin that the target has appeared, the leading man said quickly. Whoosh! A woman suddenly transformed into a dazzling golden bird, flapped her wings, and flew away. The taboo power of space, which was enough to stop any practitioner from flying, obviously couldn't stop this woman who was originally a divine bird. At this point, the leading man breathed a sigh of relief, and his eyes became sharp and cold. Get ready to fight. He gave the order. The people nearby all took action. They either took out their treasures or operated their secret method. They were like the gods in the mountain, overlooking Lin Sun who was walking slowly in the distance. On the ancient cyan stone steps, Lin Sun raised his head and glanced at these people without any emotion in his eyes. Boom! The next moment, the broken sword swept out like a white flash of lightning. Without any nonsense, the battle began. The powerful and overbearing attack made the successors of the Universe Taoist court look gloomy, and they attacked without hesitation. At the same time, on the top of Yulong Mountain, the mountain wind was whistling, and the sea of clouds was steaming. The experts of the Universe Taoist court, the Wilderness Taoist court, the Taowu Battle Clan, and the Blood Kailan Battle Clan gathered here. The scene was amazing. There were many great saints among them, and each of them was like the sun in the sky. Their bodies were flowing with strange lights, which illuminated the top of the mountain. Many people were filled with pride. With so many heirs of the major forces gathered in one place, any expert would be torn to pieces in the face of such a powerful force. Swish! On the mountain road, a golden bird rushed out and said quickly, "Senior Gu, Lin Sun has killed all the way from the bottom of the mountain." These words caused the surroundings to become restless, and many people were astounded. That fellow actually really came? Haha, he doesn't know death. Now that he has appeared, it's not in vain that we have been waiting here for so many days. Gu Zongxin sneered. Many top figures were gathered here, and they were all outstanding talents from various forces. There was no lack of peerless geniuses ranked on the Starry Sky Great Saints list. In the face of such a brilliant gathering of heroes, it was enough to suffocate and make anyone feel frightened. Lin Sun was doomed to be a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Everyone, the target has appeared. Those who have enmity will take revenge, and those who have grievances will take revenge. I only have one thing to say. Today we must kill this brat here. Gu Zongxin's expression was cold. Of course. There were more than 10 peerless great sages standing nearby, all of them revealing killing intent. Their bodies either seethed with divine flames, flowed with golden light, shot into the sky with sword insight, or swallowed the world. Every single one of their auras were peerlessly formidable, and every single move they made carried the might to obliterate the heavens and the earth. This was a peak existence among absolute great saints. He was dazzling like a star, and if he was placed on the starry sky ancient path, he would be a stunning figure whose name reigned supreme. Tao Jianxing and Kuan Jilin were among them. The reason why they, who belonged to different forces, could work together was that they had all suffered great losses in the hands of Lin Sun when they were in the treasure refining place. If they didn't work together, they wouldn't be able to suppress Lin Sun. Now, hundreds of them had gathered and were ready to fight. They were confident that they could defeat any peer, let alone Lin Sun. Haha, Lin Sun probably didn't expect how much hatred he had aroused. Gu Sangxin said slowly, full of ambition. Bah! A voice full of sarcasm sounded. In front of the cliff not far away, a bloody rock raised its head with difficulty and sneered, "It's shameful to bully the few with numbers. Don't you feel ashamed to talk so complacently?" Its pair of wings were broken, and its body was pierced by a huge bronze awl. It was nailed to the ground fiercely. Its blood was still flowing, and it was unable to break free. Not far away, a hoarse and weak sneer came out, "Little Rock King, you're wrong. How can they be ashamed?" This was a vigorous rock, but its fur was cracked, and its flesh was badly mutilated. Its arms were broken, and a pair of shoulder bones were pierced by a dark chain, imprisoning it on the ground. Yuan Fatian, like the young golden-winged rock, he was suppressed and couldn't move. He was seriously injured and dying. Noisy. Gu Sangxin's face darkened, served them well. Immediately, two people stood out, each holding an iron whip covered with dense bloody Taoist patterns, and lashed down fiercely. Crack, crack, crack. Every blow was no less than a blunt knife cutting the bones. The young golden-winged rock and Yuan Fatian's bodies twitched violently. The pain went deep into their bones and affected their souls. Could be called the most cruel torture in the world. You have a tough bone, but you're just a loser. If you weren't still useful, I would have killed you long ago. Gu Sangxin looked cold. Other strong people nearby also sneered. They all knew that these two people had a close relationship with Lin Sun. All the losses they had suffered from Lin Sun were vented on these two people. Haha, with them, Lin Sun will be afraid to take action. I'd like to see whether he will make a choice for these two people. It must be very unpleasant. Tao Jianxing laughed out loud with a cruel expression. It's a pity that before we arrived at the top of Yulong Mountain, some people with flying immortal tokens entered the mysterious forbidden area. Otherwise, if we caught them together, Lin Sun would be more embarrassed and uncomfortable. Kuan Jilin sighed softly. Don't worry. Lu Xuanji and some other practitioners have already gone to the mysterious forbidden area. It's only a matter of time before they kill those people with flying immortal tokens. Gu Sangxin said casually. There was a mysterious restricted area not too far away from where they stood, and it was suffused by dense white mist. If one didn't possess a flying immortal token, then anyone who forcefully trespassed into it would surely suffer misfortune. Just as everyone was talking loudly, suddenly, a dull crash came from the mountain road below, attracting many people's attention. Then, the conversation stopped abruptly. A strange and bloody picture appeared in everyone's mind. On the mountain road, Lin Sun walked up the stairs alone. He dragged a rope behind him, and on the rope were numerous bloody corpses of experts. There were a few dozen of them, and every single one of them was heavily injured, covered in scars, and on the verge of death. Among these captive strongmen, there were more than a dozen descendants of the Universe Taoism court who had stopped Lin Sun halfway up the mountain. Seeing this, the woman who had turned into a divine bird to inform Lin Sun couldn't help screaming and turning pale. The top of Yulong Mountain was also shocked at this moment. Damn it! Damn it! Those are our companions of the Blood-Scale Battle Clan. How dare you humiliate the descendants of the primitive Taoism court like this? On the top of the mountain, the crowd was furious. Many people's faces were gloomy, and their eyes were full of killing intent. They stared at Lin Sun fiercely. The boastful talk from before had vanished, and the atmosphere in the surroundings had become extremely murderous, causing the clouds in the sky to fall into disorder. Gu Zongxin, Kuan Jilin, Tao Jianxing and others looked cold and ugly at this moment. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would appear in this way, tying up a group of strongmen with a rope and dragging them forward. This was undoubtedly the most direct provocation and humiliation. Ha ha, Lin Sun, you're the best. I can die in peace now that I can see you again. Yuan Fatian laughed wildly with tears in his eyes. He didn't expect that Lin Sun would really come. Didn't he change as before? Fool, can't you see that this is a trap to deal with you? Go. I'd rather die than let you lose your life. The young golden-winged roc cursed. He was anxious. He was not so anxious and angry just now, not to mention the whipping and humiliation. Lin Sun stepped on the top of the mountain and looked through the crowd at the young golden-winged roc, who was nailed to the ground by the iron awl, and at Yuan Fatian whose shoulder bone was pierced by the chain. He felt suffocated. They came for me in the first place. You guys were just dragged into this by me. Lin Sun's voice was low, and his black eyes were deep and terrible. Go. The young golden-winged roc roared, and his eyes turned red. Didn't this guy know that the people gathered here were all powerful figures on the starry sky ancient path, and those in the 9 regions couldn't be compared to them? Want to leave? Impossible, Gu Zongxin said coldly. His killing intent surged and swept across the void. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes locked on Lin Sun like lightning. He said word by word, "Today, all of you will die." Bang! Lin Sun stood still and didn't move. However, behind him, the body of a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Tao Court who was tied up suddenly exploded, and a rain of blood splashed high into the air. Obviously, this was Lin Sun's answer to Gu Zongxin. You're courting death. The descendants of the Universe Taoist court were furious and wanted to rush up, but they were stopped by the other strong people present. Lin Sun controlled the lives of dozens of strong people, not only the descendants of the Universe Taoist court, but also the strong people of other forces. This was a huge threat, and everyone present was afraid to take action. Let them go, and I'll let these people go too. Lin Sun's expression was cold. This was the reason why he had never been merciless in his slaughter along the way. He wanted to exchange the lives of these enemies for the lives of young golden-winged roc and Yuan Fatian. Wishful thinking, Kuan Jilin shouted angrily. Originally, they captured young golden-winged roc and Yuan Fatian to threaten Lin Sun. Who would have thought that Lin Sun would do the same? Bang! Behind Lin Sun, a descendant of the primitive Taoist court died suddenly. His body was torn into pieces, and his death was so miserable that the other strong people who were tied up screamed and screamed. This cruel and bloody method caused Gu Zongxin and the others to grit their teeth with hatred, and they were angered to the point their eyes almost split apart. This bastard actually came prepared. Aren't you worried that we'll kill these 2 people? Tao Jianxing said coldly and threatened Lin Sun. Bang! This time, among the captives behind Lin Sun, a descendant of the Swanee war clan died suddenly and fell in a pool of blood. From beginning to end, Lin Sun seemed extremely powerful and domineering. His methods were also extremely bloody, which made the strong people present tremble. They had no doubt that if they provoked him again, Lin Sun would only kill more captives. Chapter 18:15. The atmosphere was oppressive and the air seemed stagnant. Golden-winged Roc King and Yuan Fatian were both speechless. They were shocked by Lin Sun's bloody means, and they were both moved and worried. If this continued, Lin Sun would only be hated by these successors from the starry sky ancient path, and the consequences would be unimaginable. Gu Zongxin and others looked gloomy. They were struggling in their hearts and sullen. Being threatened by Lin Sun with the help of the strong ones in their forces made them so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. They had carefully prepared for this game, but Lin Sun was so strong before the game started, which was beyond their expectation. Could it be that in your eyes, the lives of the people I've captured are so insignificant? Lin Sun said with a sarcastic tone. Gu Sangxin and others' faces changed. Lin Sun's words were too harsh. If they got back to the sects behind them, it would inevitably have a negative impact on them. Let them go, and I will also let these two people go. Tao Jianxing said word by word, as if squeezed out of his teeth. The captives all breathed a sigh of relief. Even ants were greedy for life, not to mention the practitioners who had already made proud achievements on the Great Tao. In the face of real death, they would only be more afraid of death. No, you let them go first. Lin Sun said flatly. Tao Jianxing was furious. Before his voice died away, another captive of the Taowu War clan died with a bang behind Lin Sun. His blood spilled on the spot. This scene made Tao Jianxing's eyes almost pop out, and he was about to go crazy. Lin Sun said indifferently, I said, you let them go first. What's more, I am here. Are you worried that I will escape? Gu Sangxin and others looked gloomy. Finally, they discussed in secret and reached a unanimous decision to let the captives go. This made the others present and those who were captured by Lin Sun all let out a sigh of relief. How could the lives of two strong men in the ancient desolation realm be more important than the lives of the successors of these great forces? What was more, even if Lin Sun let these two people go, did he think he could leave with his friends today? Wishful thinking. Puff. The iron awl that had been stabbed into the young golden-winged rock king's body was pulled out. At the same time, the chain that had been stabbed into Yuan Feishan's shoulder bone was also pulled out. Both of them staggered to their feet with dazed expressions. This feeling of surviving a calamity caused them to practically wonder if they were dreaming. They had originally thought that there was no way out. Brother Lin, thank you so much. Yuan Feishan's lips were trembling and his voice was hoarse. He was so grateful that he wanted to say something but stopped himself. The young golden-winged rock king stepped forward and patted Lin Sun on the shoulder. He didn't say a word, but his eyes were full of emotions. It's all right. With me around, the sky won't collapse. I'll drink with the two of you after I kill these eyesores. As Lin Sun spoke, he took the two of them into the Great Way Endless Tower, where Old Toad and Ah Lu would help heal them. Now, it's time for you to release him. Gu Zong Xian roared. All the others present fixed their eyes on Lin Sun. If he dared to escape, they would attack him with all their strength. But to their surprise, Lin Sun seemed very happy at this moment. With a flick of his wrist, the ropes binding the captives were put away. The captives were overjoyed to have escaped death. They rushed back to Gu Zong Xian and the others. At this point, Gu Zong Xian and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. Ha ha ha, Lin Sun, you idiot, do you really think I'll let them go so easily? Suddenly, Tao Jianxing laughed with a complacent look on his face. I've planted the poisonous insect in the bodies of your two friends. As long as I think about it, they will die immediately. As soon as these words came out, all the people present were refreshed, and the anger and depression that had accumulated in their hearts were swept away. No one had expected that Tao Jianxing had prepared such a backup plan. Isn't it too early to be happy? But Lin Sun looked very calm, without any panic. Instead, there was a sneer on his face. Bang! His voice hadn't even finished resounding through the air when one of the captives who had just escaped from the jaws of death suddenly stiffened before falling soundlessly to the ground. His body was still there, but his soul had been erased. This sudden scene caused Tao Jianxing's smile to instantly freeze, and the hearts of everyone present jerked as they felt a chill run down their spines. The pupils of Gu Zong Xian and the others also shrank. There was no doubt that Tao Jianxing had a backup plan, but so did Lin Sun. This shocked and angered all the people present. Now, hand over the antidote. If you dare to play any tricks, I promise that all the captives will die miserably. Lin Sun said coldly. Tao Jianxing's cheeks were livid, and his eyes were about to burst into flames. In the previous confrontation, Lin Sun had taken the initiative in every aspect, which made him almost explode with anger. Brother Tao, promise him that I'll kill you in an upright way. Gu Zong Xian thought. Okay. Tao Jianxing finally agreed. He took out 2 cyan cocoons and threw them to Lin Sun. Lin Sun checked them and found nothing unusual, so he handed them over to Yuan Fatian and young golden-winged rock in the Tower of Endless Way. Lin Sun was relieved until they were completely sure that there was no hidden danger in them. Little Silver, come back, Lin Sun said. With a swoosh, a silver light swept out from a captive and returned to Lin Sun. It was Lin Sun. Seeing this scene, the strong man who was hidden in Little Silver's body was so scared that he felt weak all over and felt a lingering fear. Gu Zong Xian and the others all raised their eyebrows and secretly felt lucky. Immediately their faces became cold, and they looked at Lin Sun with undisguised killing intent. Lin Sun, what else can you do now? Tao Jianxing grinned grimly. Have you learned your lesson? Lin Sun glanced at him coldly, which made Tao Jianxing surprised. Could it be that Lin Sun still had other hidden cards? The next moment Lin Sun laughed. Are you scared? Don't worry, I'm not as despicable as you. Tao Jianxing flew into a rage out of shame. He knew that he was fooled by Lin Sun, so he couldn't help feeling embarrassed. In the distance of the mountain road below, many practitioners who followed Lin Sun saw what happened on the top of the mountain. So far, they couldn't help but be shocked. If it were other practitioners, they would have collapsed and surrendered in the face of such a great battle. But Lin Sun, facing so many enemies alone, still had a disdainful and calm momentum. He was just like a god which moved people. However, the current situation was clear. These onlookers were all worried about Lin Sun. Was he really going to fight against enemies in all directions alone? This was simply unimaginable. Lin Sun, you killed Yen Chunjun, the successor of Heaven and Earth Taoism court. This hatred must be settled today. Gu Zong Xian couldn't hold back and shouted. In the previous situation, although they were restrained by Lin Sun in every way, they didn't lose anything. But now it was different. Lin Sun was alone on the top of Yulong Mountain, which was the best time to kill him. Tao Jianxing also said coldly, if you are willing to take the initiative to leave the flying immortal token in your hand and kneel down to atone for your crime, I can give you a way to live. Humph! A way to live? Don't even think about it. This man must die today. Coin Julin's face was gloomy. Others also spoke one after another, all of them full of killing intent. They regarded Lin Sun as a fish on the chopping block. Some of them coveted the flying immortal token, and some wanted to take his life. There were also some that had set their sights on the treasures in his possession, because they were clearly aware that when he was near the upside-down mountain where he refined treasures, he'd once withdrawn a mysterious and unfathomable pagoda and jade bottle, and their might was extraordinarily great and had blocked the joint attacks of numerous experts. Seeing this scene, the onlookers in the distance were all frightened. Lin Sun was in danger. Are you all done? Lin Sun suddenly said with a scornful smile on his face. I only have one request. You must all die. As soon as this remark came out, the whole audience was silent. Everyone showed an incredible look as if they were looking at a madman. Ha ha ha, obviously, this little thing hasn't clearly realized his own situation, so he dares to talk nonsense like this. Gu Zong Xian laughed. He was surrounded by wisps of black sword intent, sharp and fierce, like an ancient fierce god. Do it! At the same time, Tao Jianxing shouted. Boom! On the top of the Yulong Mountain, there was suddenly a rolling divine brilliance, which turned into mysterious and complicated symbols, intertwining in the void and evolving into a big formation that covered the sky and the sun. As soon as this formation was formed, the wind and thunder surged, the color changed in all directions, the roars of gods and demons, the chanting of sages and sages resounded, and the law of the Great Way evolved into a chaotic world, surging and covering. The formation of demons and chaos. It was an ancient holy formation inherited from the heaven and earth Taoism court. It was said that in ancient times, there was an emperor who had personally deduced this formation, and its lethality was shocking. This was a trump card carefully arranged by Guzong Xian. In an instant, Lin Sun's figure was submerged in it and could no longer be seen. On the mountain road below, the onlookers were all shocked. This formation appeared suddenly, and they didn't even notice a trace of it before. The aura exuded by the formation was also terrifying, causing many peerless great saints to tremble in fear and their hair to stand on end. Lin Sun is still too careless. This is a killing trap. In order to kill him, Guzong Xian has obviously made enough preparations. Many people sighed in their hearts. On the other hand, Guzong Xian and the others revealed cold expressions. This idiot dared to come here alone to court death. Did he really think they had prepared for nothing these days? Activate the formation and kill this bastard. Guzong Xian gave the order without delay. From the beginning to the end, they didn't underestimate Lin Sun at all, and it was because they regarded Lin Sun as a dangerous person that they didn't hesitate to join forces and spend a lot of effort to set up such a powerful formation of demons and chaos. It was for the sake of giving Lin Sun a fatal blow. And now, it was time to close the net and kill the enemy. The situation in the field changed dramatically. Only Ah Hu, who was hiding in the crowd of onlookers, raised the corners of his mouth with a playful smile. If a Taoist inscription grandmaster who could build a seemingly eternal city of Tao protectors on his own was trapped and killed by a grand formation. Chapter 1816. Rise! 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 At this moment, Gu Tsangxin, Kuan Jilin, Tao Jianxing, and more than a dozen great sages were standing in the void. Some were holding apricot flags, some were holding red copper bells, some were operating purple wheels, and some were waving ancient scrolls. In the formation of demons casting chaos, the sound of Taoism roared, and the light swept across, reflecting all kinds of doomsday-like scenes. The scene that shook the heavens and the earth caused everyone present to be unable to help but gasp. An ancient killing formation was controlled and operated by many great sages together. Even a sage king was doomed to suffer if trapped in it. Lin Sun was just a peerless great saint. Perhaps he had shown amazing fighting power in the previous battles, but how could he resist such a trap? Lin Sun is finished. On the mountain road below, there were many sharp-eyed people among the spectators. They could judge from the power released by the formation. No matter who was in the great sage realm, as long as he was trapped, there was no way to survive. Boom! The power of the formation of demons casting chaos became more and more terrifying, causing the sky to shake. On the huge Yulong Mountain, there was an earth-shattering scene. Fortunately, Yulong Mountain was one of the 9 secrets in the Kunlun ruins. It was incomparably strong and immortal, so it could withstand the breath of such a killing formation. If it was in the outside world, not to mention a mountain, even a vast city would be instantly refined and destroyed by the formation. Kill! Tao Jianxing was in high spirits, with a grim smile on his face. His heart was full of joy. Before, he was held back by Lin Sun in every way, which made him almost cough up blood. But now it was different. Lin Sun was like a trapped beast, ready to be slaughtered. Well, everyone, be careful. It doesn't matter if he dies, but don't refine all his treasures. Gu Tsangxin chuckled, hesitant and proud. This time we can trap and kill him thanks to the killing formation in Brother Gu's hands. It is indeed one of the 5 saint prohibitions of the Qiankuan Taoist court. It is an eye-opener for me. Kuan Jilin sighed. The others present also nodded secretly. The might of this formation could really be said to be capable of shaking the heavens and the earth, and it possessed unbelievable destructive might that caused them to be extremely horrified. You flatter me. In fact, Lin Sun is also a powerful figure. Unfortunately, he is too arrogant. Generally speaking, this kind of arrogant person is destined to have a bad end. Gu Zongxin's smile was very reserved. They talked loudly and boastfully as if the outcome had been decided and victory was within their grasp. All the onlookers on the mountain road sighed inwardly. Lin Sun was more than just a powerful figure. He killed Yan Chunjun and Luong. In the Battle of the Upside-Down Mountain, he was the most outstanding one and retreated safely. Furthermore, if he was just an ordinary powerful figure, how could he have attracted the joint attack of so many great forces? It wasn't exaggerated to say that even though this kid was from the ancient Desolation region, his combat strength was formidable and his bearing was peerless. Even if he was on the ancient path of the starry sky, it was sufficient to make most of his peers dim in comparison, and even some peerless figures on the starry sky great saint rankings were unable to raise their heads. But reality was too cruel in the end. After today, such a heaven-defying and peerless figure was bound to be removed from the world. Who wouldn't sigh at this? What? But at this moment, Gu Zongxin suddenly frowned and noticed that something was wrong. He spread out his spiritual awareness to control the formation to sense. In just a moment, his eyes suddenly widened and he cried out involuntarily, "How is this possible?" His voice was filled with astonishment as if he had encountered the most incredible thing in the world. Kuan Jilin was stunned and couldn't help asking, "Brother Gu, is it possible that this kid has refined all his treasures?" Others were also confused. Boom! Right at this moment, the divine radiance, the light of the Tao, and the phenomena that blotted out the sky within the devil-slaughtering formation suddenly exploded, and they were dispersed by a terrifying force. The scene within the formation was also clearly reflected in everyone's vision. Lin Sun stood there alone, motionless and unscathed. His moon-white clothes fluttered in the wind, and he looked ethereal like an immortal. This, Kuan Jilin, Tao Jianxing and others also widened their eyes and almost fell out. They looked like they had seen a ghost, and the complacency on their faces froze. How was this possible? The power of the demon-slaying formation was so terrible that they couldn't stop praising it and were shocked. It was powerful enough to trap and kill the existence at the level of Saint King. But now Lin Sun, who was trapped in the formation from beginning to end, was not hurt at all. God! Is there something wrong with my eyes? He's fine? Everyone was stunned, and their faces were full of astonishment. Just now they were sighing and feeling sorry for Lin Sun's death. But they didn't expect that Lin Sun didn't need anyone's pity at all. Because even the demon-slaying chaotic world formation that caused one to despair couldn't do anything to him. There was silence in the field. They were all stunned by this scene, and their minds were shocked. In the formation, Lin Sun said with a puzzled face, "Why did you stop? Come on, please continue your performance." His words were like a sharp blade that stabbed fiercely into the hearts of Gu Zongxin and the others, causing their expressions to change indeterminately while they were seething with rage. This was undoubtedly the most naked ridicule and humiliation, which made their faces burn as if they had been slapped in the face. "Kill! Kill this bastard with all your strength!" Gu Zongxin roared, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged. He was completely angry. Boom! The formation was activated again, and its power was much stronger than before. Whether it was Tao Jianxing, Kuan Jilin, or other great sages, they all tried their best to activate the formation to the extreme. Lin Sun's figure was once again drowned by the overwhelming Taoist light and divine light. This time, it should be enough, right? After a while, Tao Jianxing said with a cold face. Although he could control the formation, he couldn't feel what was happening in it. Only Gu Zongxin, who presided over the formation, could feel it. Therefore, when Tao Jianxing asked, he looked at Gu Zongxin. In an instant, He noticed that Gu Songxin's expression was not right. His pupils dilated, and he gritted his teeth with a look of disbelief and anger. This scene was also noticed by other practitioners present, and they couldn't help but be shocked. Could it be boom? At this time, the formation roared again, and the light rain burst and disappeared. Lin Sun's figure stood in the rain of Taoist light. Although he was motionless, he seemed invincible. Even the power of the formation, which was enough to destroy a sage king, collapsed around him. The entire place was shaken, and there was absolute silence. The spectators on the mountain path were all dumbfounded. Ever since they started cultivating, they had never encountered such an inconceivable thing. "Is this the killing trap you set?" Lin Sun said with undisguised sarcasm. "It seems that it's just so." He finally moved and took a step forward. Boom. It was just a step, but it seemed to have supreme power. The demon-slaying formation inherited from the heaven and earth Taoism court suddenly exploded. The rolling divine light surged, and the dense Taoist symbols collapsed. With one step, the world was turned upside down, and the formation was destroyed. Everyone revealed astounded expressions as they gazed at the tall figure that lightly walked out of the grand formation. It was like seeing a god. Is this the supreme means of a Taoist master? In the crowd of spectators, whose eyes were a little unfocused. He was also shocked by the amazing means that Lin Sun showed at this moment. "The killing starts now." The low and cold voice swept across the whole field like a cold current, and Lin Sun's figure suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in front of a group of practitioners. His body was like a furnace of the great way that had been accumulating power for a long time, and it burst out a bright torrent of sword intent. Bang! 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 It was too late to stop it. The bodies of these practitioners were drowned in an instant, and then they exploded in the raging sword intent. The moment their flesh and blood splashed out, they were evaporated by the sword qi. They died without a whole body and were turned into ashes. This overbearing and bloody scene made Gu Songxin and others tremble all over. They had no time to think about anything else and attacked with all their strength. "Hurry up! Let's kill this guy together!" The roar of anger was earth-shattering. On the top of Yulong Mountain, all the descendants of the great forces moved, and they besieged Lin Sun like overlapping waves. Rumble, all sorts of unfathomable might and all sorts of dazzling and resplendent treasures surged in the surroundings as if they were free. Even the heavens and the earth dimmed down while the void fell into disorder. Such a scene caused the spectators to be unable to help but exclaim with shock, and they retreated in horror as they were deeply afraid of being affected by it. All of you can't fight one-on-one, and it's even more impossible to fight one-on-one. Lin Sun's figure glowed like a furnace that burned violently, and the killing intent and rage that had accumulated in his heart had erupted completely at this moment. Clang! The broken blade flashed out while a clear howl surged through the 9 heavens. With a flash, the bodies of a few practitioners were slashed into 2 at the waist, and they let out shrill cries. Bang! Lin Sun circulated his cultivation technique. As he breathed, it was like a storm was surging, and he moved about in the surroundings. He was arrogant and overbearing like a fiend god, and his murderous aura shook the heavens. Everywhere he passed, all techniques and treasures were blasted to the point of dispersing and being unable to obstruct him. The peerless divine might he emanated caused the spectators in the distance to be dumbstruck. Kill! Gu Songxin charged over with his sword in hand while his body emanated black sword intent that shot into the sky. His expression was livid, ferocious, and he attacked without holding back at all. Swoosh! The divine sword in his palm was like a rainbow that gathered the energy of the world, and it possessed copious might. Wherever the sword pointed, a straight crack was plowed open in the sky. This was Gu Songxin, a ferocious figure ranked in the top 100 of the great saint rankings. His attack of rage was naturally extraordinary, But Lin Sun merely slapped out with his palm, yet the terrifying sword intent that shot towards him exploded inch by inch, and the force of his palm swept out and slapped Gu Tsangxin flying. Bang! Amidst a muffled bang, blood sprayed from Gu Tsangxin's mouth and nose, and he smashed fiercely against an ancient rock like a kite with its string cut. Gu Tsangxin had been slapped to the point he couldn't resist at all. Many people felt their scalps go numb. Is he still human? On the other hand, Kuan Jilin, Tao Jianxing, and the other great saints who had fought Lin Sun in the past were completely sure that Lin Sun had become even stronger than before. Not only had his cultivation broken through to the intermediate stage of the great saint realm, even his combat strength had more than doubled. Goldfish will stay up late at night to store up a palm, and when it erupts tomorrow, it will release 2 consecutive palm strikes at noon. Chapter 18:17. Go to hell. A cold voice came out of Lin Sun's mouth. His fists were like a great furnace breaking through. The numerous cultivators that charged towards Chen Shi had utilized their entire strengths, yet they were like weeds before this punch, and they were crushed on the spot. Blood and flesh splashed everywhere like a rainstorm. In the outside world, people under the Sage Realm were like ants. The Sage Realm represented a height that countless people could not reach. They could turn the clouds with their breath, burn the mountains and boil the sea with incredible power. They stood at a higher place on the road of immortality, and had a long life. The descendants of the great forces in the field were even more extraordinary. Any one of them was no weaker than the great Sage Realm, and there were even some peerless great sages among them. But no matter who it was, in front of Lin Sun at this moment, they were like fragile glass, vulnerable chickens and pottery dogs. He galloped with his black hair fluttering. His body was like an immortal furnace, bursting out earth-shattering destructive power. This, of course, was shocking. Perhaps those under the Sage Realm were like ants, but those above the Sage Realm were no different from ants in front of Lin Sun, who was in the same realm. Gu Tsangxin, Tao Jianxing, Kuan Jilin, and others were all furious. From the beginning, they did not underestimate Lin Sun. Otherwise, they would not have united together and tried their best to set up a trap here. All this was because of the battle in the inverted mountain. Lin Sun's combat power was so strong that they all felt afraid. But they didn't expect that Lin Sun's combat power had changed dramatically compared with the time when he was in the inverted mountain. What was more unexpected was that the demon-slaying formation, which they had high hopes for, was like a decoration in the end, and did not cause any harm to Lin Sun at all. Present, Lin Sun was like a demon, sweeping across the field and killing the strong on their side one by one. How could Gu Tsangxin and others not be angry? Suppress! With a furious roar, Kuan Jilin attacked. He was like a divine Kuan wandering in the North Sea, setting off a storm all over the sky. In his hand there was a bright halberd, flowing with obscure Taoist light. The blade was incomparably sharp, emitting a peerless fierce light. Sea God's halberd. This was Kuan Jilin's trump card. It was rumored that this halberd was born in a chaotic world, and was formed from the world's heaviest profound water. It was a connate ancient treasure. The void exploded, causing turbulence in the area. The power of Neptune's halberd surprised Lin Sun. Dang! He brandished the Avicii sword. A pitch-black purgatory appeared, its sword intent dense. It collided head-on with the sea god's halberd, producing a deafening rumble. Thud, thud, thud. Kuan Jilin's body staggered back in the void. The Neptune halberd in his hand buzzed and trembled as he tried to learn how to roll away. Without a doubt, the might of the Avicii sword was completely not inferior to the sea god's halberd. If it was any other holy treasure, it would have been crushed long ago. Buzz. Just as Lin Sun was about to chase after Kuan Jiu, a brilliant silver rainbow suddenly flew towards him at an extremely fast speed. It was a slender and translucent shuttle-shaped treasure, like a swimming fish. The sharpness it produced made Lin Sun's body tingle. Kill! Tao Jianxing roared. He was the one controlling the treasure, and his face was filled with cold, killing intent. Whoosh! The fish-like treasure ignored the shackles of space, and suddenly appeared in front of Lin Sun, stabbing at his brow fiercely. At this moment, the broken blade suddenly appeared and blocked the mysterious blow. But a drop of blood flowed out of Lin Sun's brow. The shuttle-shaped treasure was too sharp. Although it was blocked, its breath still swept through Lin Sun's brow. He blocked it. Tao Jianxing was stunned, showing a look of disbelief. This treasure of his was also an unfathomable ancient treasure. It looked like a shuttle, but in fact, it was a flying sword named Taiyu. This sword was refined by the void crystal born in Zhou Su. It was a veritable flying sword. It came and went without a trace, unrestrained by space, extremely mysterious and terrible. But just now, this sword was blocked by Lin Sun. Humph! Lin Sun's eyes were cold, and he suddenly moved to kill Tao Jianxing. Whoosh! Tao Jianxing's face changed slightly, and the Taiyu flying sword swept out again at an incredible speed. But halfway, it was entangled by a thunderstorm whip. The flying sword buzzed and trembled violently, but it was firmly trapped. Purple Thunder Whip. This was a powerful ancient treasure Lin Sun obtained from Tu Qingxiong after he killed him under the peach tree. Its power was even stronger than that of the broken blade. The most amazing thing was that the whip was entangled with fierce and domineering purple thunder. When it whipped the void, it could produce a terrible field, which could restrain the killing of space. Crack! Lin Sun shook his hand, and the Taiyu flying sword whined. It was bound by the purple thunder whip and fell into Lin Sun's palm. Tao Jianxing's mind was backfired, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Oh no! With a horrified look, he tried to dodge, but it was too late. The Avicii sword, which was like a purgatory, swept up a monstrous black flame as it descended from the sky and struck down violently. Boom! In an instant, Tao Jianxing's body seemed to be cut by thousands of knives, showing crisscrossed sword marks. His skin was torn and his flesh was torn, and his blood was splashing like a waterfall. Especially his chest, which was cut open by the sword of Avicii. His internal organs were shattered, and he was smashed to the ground. Bang! Tao Jianxing fell to the ground. His body was broken. He could only let out a scream, and then he was dead. The surging sword qi was too overbearing. It raged in his body and completely destroyed his vitality. God! Tao Jianxing was killed. There was a burst of exclamation in the field. The practitioners who watched the battle in the distance were shocked. Lin Sun was so fierce that he showed an invincible momentum. No one could suppress him. Kill! Several peerless great sages joined hands to kill Lin Sun. All of them looked extremely solemn. Lin Sun's strength was far beyond their imagination. They all tried their best without reservation. In the past, even if Lin Sun could resist such a siege, he would inevitably be suppressed, just like the battle in the inverted mountain. But now, he was not the same as before. Before swallowing the peach, he could kill Tu Qingxiong, who ranked 27th on the Starry Sky Great Sages list. After he swallowed the peach, it was equivalent to 10 years of bitter cultivation. For an expert like Lin Sun who possessed extremely deep reserves, 10 years of bitter cultivation didn't just bring about a transformation in his cultivation, even his own great Tao had undergone a tremendous change. Under such circumstances, how could he be afraid of a group attack? Open! Lin Sun suddenly shouted loudly in the battlefield. His figure was like a furnace while the spirit, energy, and essence in his body surged and blazed, and his imposing aura was boundlessly brilliant like the sun that lay across the sky. Bang! Every single punch of his carried the might to shake the heavens and the earth, and it contained the profundities of the 9 transformations of the Calamity Dragon and the fierceness of the 6 slashes of heaven. The might of his fist flashed out and swept in all directions. All the enemies that besieged him in the vicinity seemed as if they'd been struck by a divine mountain, and their bodies rumbled as they were blasted, flying and heavily injured. The figure of one of the peerless great sages even exploded into pieces, causing blood to spray in all directions. A wave of astounded cries resounded in the field, and all of them were shocked by this scene. One person was besieged by hundreds of successors from various top forces. Not only was he not suppressed, but he alone swept through the field, causing heads to roll and blood to flow like a river. Such peerless ferocity was simply shocking. If it was spread out, it would definitely cause a monstrous storm. Damn it! How could this be? Did he really come from the ancient Desolation realm? At this moment, Gu Tsangxin, Kuan Jilin, and the others all felt a chill in their bodies, and great terror surged in their hearts. On the starry sky ancient path, there had never been a shortage of peerless geniuses, and there was no shortage of peerless figures who were as dazzling as the sun. But no one had expected that a young man who didn't belong to the starry sky ancient path at all would defeat them today. The field was suffused with blood, and the murderous aura was surging. It was a terrible and bloody scene. The battle was still going on. Lin soon swept through the field decisively, as if he was truly invincible and invincible. Bang! 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 One after another, the experts from the primitive Taoist court, the Qiankuan Taoist court, the Blood Kailan battle clan, and the Taowu battle clan were killed. It was useless to escape. Mount Yulong was covered in a spatial taboo energy, making it impossible to fly or teleport. The reason why Gu Tsangxin and the others had set up a trap here was because they wanted to prevent Lin Sun from escaping when they hunted him. Who would have thought that this spatial taboo energy would become a stumbling block to their escape? Boom! At this moment, Lin Sun became more and more courageous as he fought, venting all the anger and killing intent in his heart. Ever since he entered the Kunlun ruins, he had been regarded as prey and targeted by everyone. Some people coveted the flying celestial token in his hand. Some people wanted to snatch his treasures, and almost no one took him, a young man from the ancient Desolation realm, seriously. If that was the case, Lin Sun wouldn't have flown into a rage. However, when he found out that the young golden-winged Rock King and Yuan Fatian were also in trouble because of the flying celestial token, and they were implicated because of him, Lin Sun was completely enraged. The 6 Dao courts and 10 battle clans had touched Lin Sun's bottom line, so he wouldn't have any scruples at all. Run! Many people broke down. They were scared out of their wits, and they fled down the mountain path in a panic. Damn it! Retreat! When the spectators who were standing on the mountain path saw this, their expressions changed. They were afraid of being affected, and they started to retreat. Only one person did not dodge. Ahu! She wore a yellow dress and stood alone. Her graceful figure stood there with a sweet smile and beautiful eyes, and she emitted a charm that could captivate all living beings. Swoosh! She attacked. A powerful sword intent flashed out like purple chi from the east, and it carried a vast aura that was as powerful as the clouds. In the blink of an eye, the 3 cultivators who were the first to flee were killed on the spot. Their bodies were torn into pieces, and blood dyed the steps red. Not a single one of them could block Ahu's sword. The nearby spectators gulped with difficulty. Only then did they realize that this devastatingly beautiful beauty was actually on Lin Sun's side. Moreover, her battle prowess was terrifyingly powerful. Chapter 1818. Ahu's appearance was like a horizontal barrier, blocking the mountain road. Her beauty was breathtaking, but her combat power was also so strong that no one dared to underestimate her. After all, how could an ordinary person have the power to kill 3 descendants of great forces with one sword? You can't escape, Ahu said. She stood alone, and wisps of purple great way emerged in her palm, turning into a frightening sword intent. This made the strong people on the top of Yulong Mountain extremely shocked and angry. Their retreat was also blocked, and they had no way to retreat. Fight! Gu Tsangxin roared with a livid face. He could see that Lin Sun and that woman were obviously going to kill them this time. Swish, Gu Songxin's body seemed to be burning, releasing his potential to the extreme. He took out a black sword covered with ferocious blood-red Taoist patterns and chopped at Lin Sun. Before the sword light arrived, the sharp sword intent that tore through the void was already so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes and their souls trembled. Gu Songxin was stronger than Yan Chunjun, and he was a peerless swordsman in the top 50 of Starry Sky great saints. At this moment, he attacked desperately and even used his secret treasure, which could be imagined how powerful it was. Humph! Lin Sun raised his hand and lashed out with his whip. The purple thunder whip was glittering with crystal-clear thunder and lightning arcs, which made the sword shake violently. The collision between the sword chi and the whip shadow made the void explode. Chop! At the same time, Lin Sun chopped out with his sword. Suddenly, like the beginning of chaos, the sword of Avicii came to the world like hell, and the whole void was imprisoned in it. Indistinctly, endless sword chi emerged from the hell, splitting yin and yang, raging the universe. The sword of Avicii itself was a primordial ancient treasure, the sword of Mingi Sword Emperor in primitive times. Its power was not inferior to any other secret treasure at all. Whoosh! In the void, the surging black sword chi rushed to Gu Songxin, and the sword intent was so terrible that even Gu Songxin felt cold. Dong! Kuan Jilin and some other great saints joined hands to stop Lin Sun's attack. Kuan Jilin took out an antique bronze bell, which suddenly enlarged and shrouded Lin Sun. The bell emitted the fluctuation of the Great Way, containing the power of life and death. Various trump cards flashed over from other directions as well. They were either rare ancient treasures or forbidden secret arts and divine abilities. In short, they were all risking their lives. Rumble, a collision that shook the heavens and the earth resounded. The battlefield was in chaos. Terrifying sword chi, blade chi, treasure chi, and blade chi raged as they swept out, causing the sun and moon to go dim and the sky to lose color. The souls of all the cultivators that were spectating the battle in the distance trembled. Their vision was covered in a vast expanse of white, and they were unable to see anything, because the aura of destruction created by the collision this time was truly too shocking. Thud, thud, thud. In the smoke and dust, Lin Sun took a few steps back. Every time he took a step, the void collapsed in disorder, which made him look a little embarrassed. This was the first time he had been pushed back since the start of the battle. Although this blow didn't cause any substantial harm to Lin, it refreshed the spirits of the others present. Did this mean that Lin Sun was not invincible? That's more like it. Otherwise, all of you would probably feel disgruntled when you die. Lin Sun suddenly took a deep breath, and then his aura suddenly became much stronger. Earlier, he was like a cauldron in the sky, and he seemed to possess the might to suppress the past and present. At this moment, he'd changed completely. His body was boundlessly deep like an abyss, and he seemed as if he intended to devour the entire world. He revealed a boundlessly overbearing, imposing aura. Boundless, devouring scripture. After swallowing the peach of immortality, he'd obtained an epiphany that he'd endured for 10 years of bitter cultivation, and this peerless inheritance of the Lord of Skyfall had been comprehended and grasped by Lin Sun a step further. Now that he'd executed it with a completely new cultivation, its might couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. Kill! Quickly attack together. Gu Songxin and the others were shocked, and they practically attacked with all their might. They'd completely disregarded everything. All of you don't have a chance. Lin Sun's eyes were indifferent, and his voice was completely emotionless. After that, he moved. He was like a moving abyss that covered the sky, and everywhere he passed, space, sunlight, and dust fell into obliteration and destruction. He punched out. Clang! The antique bronze bell above Kuan Jilin's head rang, spurting out a waterfall-like divine rainbow to block Lin Sun's punch. This bell also had a long history. With this treasure, Kuan Jilin once blocked all the attacks of 19 peers. His clothes were not broken, and his defense was incomparably strong. But at this time, this peerless treasure buzzed and trembled under Lin Sun's punch. The waterfall-like divine rainbow was smashed into the bell, and a dent was left on it. Clang! The bronze bell rumbled, and cracks appeared on its surface. The treasure was connected with qi. When the bell was damaged, Kuan Jilin spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated rapidly. But this was just the beginning. Then, Lin Sun's punch blasted away the trump cards of the peerless figures one after another. The light rain was annihilated and devoured by Lin Sun's punch. Finally, Lin Sun's punch hit Gu Zongxin's sword. Crack! When the fist and the sword collided, the ancient sword covered with ferocious blood-colored Taoist patterns was suddenly bent, and then flew out of Gu Zongxin's hand with a buzz. Suffering from this impact, Gu Zongxin was also shaken and flew out. In just a few breaths, the situation was reversed by Lin Sun again. His unparalleled power shocked the audience once again. Watching this scene, all the overmatches were shocked to the point that their minds went blank. Again, a peerless great sage roared, and 6 divine rainbows rushed out of his body, which evolved into 6 amazing visions. Lin Sun waved his fist and rushed up. Boom! The man was like an abyss, and the punch was like an abyss. The 6 visions on the man's body could also be regarded as a strange martial art, but at this time, they were easily torn apart and exploded. The man's body was pierced by Lin Sun's punch. Like an ant being crushed by a giant elephant, his flesh and blood were crushed and annihilated. Then Gu Zongxin, Kuan Jilin and others rushed over one after another. There was no way back for them except to fight desperately. Lin Sun was neither happy nor sad. He didn't even use his treasure. He waved his fist and used the infinite devouring scripture to punch out. The fist intent was like an abyss, devouring the sky and earth. The infinite devouring scripture, a supreme martial art that once shocked the boundless starry sky and conquered many emperors, showed unimaginable power at this moment. Bang! 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 All obstructions and attacks were destroyed, crushed, and devoured, and it caused a scene that seemed like it could obliterate the heavens and the earth. Some people coughed up blood and were seriously injured. Some people were directly killed, their bodies and souls destroyed. Even Gu Zongxin, Kuan Jilin and others were injured. Under the stimulation of death, they were all bloodshot and completely crazy. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. Lin Sun's aura became more and more terrifying. In the end, his whole body was shrouded in a dark abyss, like an ancient demon god. Finally, Kuan Jilin couldn't bear it anymore. After fighting Lin Sun many times, his body cracked and his flesh burst. Blood poured out like a waterfall, making him look hideous and terrible. He screamed and rushed towards the mountain road. Puff! Ahu made a move. He had been accumulating strength for a long time and cut off a bloody head. Kuan Jilin was seriously injured and dying. After swallowing the peach, Ahu's combat power had become completely different. It would be strange if Kuan Jilin didn't die. The spectators were all trembling. Kuan Jilin's headless body was lying on the bluestone steps, with blood flowing down like a river, which made the spectators' hair stand on end. Looking at the battlefield, there were only a dozen people who besieged Lin Sun at this time, and each of them was injured like a trapped beast. The spectators couldn't help but have a thought appear in their minds. Gu Zongxin and the others are finished, no accident happened. In the following time, some people tried to escape, but they couldn't escape from Ahu's obstruction and were killed on the ancient Bluestone Mountain Road. Some people risked their lives to kill Lin Sun, but they were ruthlessly killed by Lin Sun like moths darting into the fire. Some people rushed to the misty, mysterious, forbidden area far away from the top of Yulong Mountain, but as soon as they entered, they screamed miserably, and their whole bodies were burned into ashes. Because only those with the immortal token could enter that place. Puff, puff, puff. One after another, peerless great saints were killed like rain. No matter how they used their treasures, magic skills, secret methods, and even their own trump cards, it was of no use under Lin Sun's attack. A torrential rain of blood poured down. The summit of Mount Yulong was completely shrouded in the color of blood. The flowing blood dyed the earth red and soaked it. The spectators trembled all over, and their minds went blank. They had seen ruthless people who killed people like flies, but it was the first time for them to see such a peerless, ruthless person like Lin Sun. He killed the disciples of great forces like killing chickens. If such bloody scenes were transmitted back to the starry sky ancient path, it was bound to cause an endless uproar. Because it was very rare for something so horrifying to happen on the ancient path. After all, almost all of these dead people came from the 6 Tao courts and the 10 war clans. In the past, who dared to disrespect them? Who dared to slaughter them mercilessly like Lin Sun? Lin Sun, I'll kill you! Only Gu Tsongxin was left in the field. He suddenly inserted the sword in his hand into his chest, like a madman. The black ancient sword covered with bloody and ferocious Taoist patterns buzzed, and Gu Tsongxin's qi, blood and strength poured into the sword like a river. His hair suddenly became pale and withered, and his skin cracked and aged, as if he had lost all his spirit at once. And the breath of the black ancient sword suddenly rose and became stronger and stronger. Sacrificial sword! The spectators in the distance all changed their expressions. This was a forbidden secret method, which was equivalent to sacrificing one's life to awaken the silent power in the treasure. Sacrificial sword. Lin Sun's black eyes showed a trace of trance, and he thought of Yun Qinbai, who also desperately fought like this. Boom! With the roar, the black ancient sword, which had absorbed all the strength of Gu Tsongxin, seemed to be completely awakened at this moment. An earth-shaking breath instantly fell on the top of Yulong Mountain. Chapter 1819. On the top of Mount Yulong, the void seemed to freeze in an instant. A core disciple of Qiankuan Taoist court, a peerless sword cultivator ranked in the top 15 of the Starry Sky Great Sage list, sacrificed himself to the sword at this moment. This was appalling. If someone dared to force Gu Tsongxin to such an extent on the Starry Sky ancient path, it would definitely arouse the wrath of Qiankuan Taoist court. But in the Kunlun ruins, such a thing happened. Buzz! The surface of the pitch-black ancient sword was rolling with ferocious blood-colored Taoist patterns. Its blade buzzed and trembled, releasing Taoist light that rose to the sky. An illusory figure appeared, majestic and mighty. Just the aura it emitted made people tremble and suffocate. Spirit! This black ancient sword turned out to be a treasure with a spirit. All the spectators were shocked. Even Lin Sun couldn't help frowning, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. In his palm, the insignificance bow appeared quietly. Lin Sun, death is what you and I have to bear. At this moment, Gu Tsongxin's white hair was withered and his body was old and dim, but his eyes were burning with raging flames and hatred. Whoosh! The black ancient sword flew across the sky, and the sword's spirit phantom rushed forward like a dominator, integrating its own power into this slash. The sword qi, which was hundreds of meters long, could even split the ancient divine mountain. It was like an ancient sword god, making the world dim, leaving only a bright and blazing sword light. The sword light was dazzling and terrifying to the extreme. Where is Wu Kei? Lin Sun shouted softly. Buzz! The insignificance bow, which was made of piles of white bones, trembled, and the figure of a gray-haired young man appeared on the ferocious and rough bow. A shocking ferocious power also filled the world. Little master, leave it to me. The gray-haired boy showed a bright smile, and his sharp eyebrows were full of vigor. He held the insignificant bow with one hand, and his fingers moved the bowstring, which was as red as blood, and suddenly looked up. His eyes were full of ferocity. Boom! It was like the creation of the world. The peak of Mount Yulong was engulfed by earth-shattering explosions and Taoist light. In the eyes, hearts, and souls of everyone, only dazzling and boundless light remained. It was like a peerlessly dazzling sun in the starry sky, and a terrifying aura of destruction spread out from it, causing it to be sufficient to shock even gods and ghosts. An indescribable fear crashed into the hearts of every spectator like a tsunami. They were overwhelmed with shock, exclaimed, and dodged. Many people were even shocked to the point of staggering to the ground with ghastly pale countenances. After a long time, the light on the peak of Mount Yulong gradually dimmed, and the fluctuations that wreaked havoc in the void began to calm down. Is it finally over? Many people heaved a long sigh of relief at the same time, feeling that their backs were drenched in cold sweat. In such an unparalleled collision, even a saint king would probably be heavily injured or killed, right? It's a pity that Gu Tsangxin sacrificed himself to the sword and sacrificed himself with Lin Sun at all costs. They are destined to be removed from the list in the future, one of the spectators sighed. Before he could finish speaking, his expression suddenly froze, and his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets as if he had seen a ghost. At the same time, all the other spectators present were stunned and looked in the same direction. On the peak of Mount Yulong, a man stood in the void, holding a ferocious and rough white bone bow in his hand. His posture was as straight as a sword, as if he was going to pierce through the sky. The moment they saw this figure, everyone was stunned. All the people present were speechless, and they were all dumbfounded. Lin Sun. He was still alive. In the field, the ground was covered with blood, countless broken limbs, and Gu Tsangxin had disappeared. There was only a dark broken sword in the pool of blood, buzzing. The atmosphere in the field was dead silent. Everyone looked at Lin Sun in a daze and couldn't believe it. Under the desperate attack of sacrificing himself to the sword, in the end, Lin Sun was unharmed, while Gu Tsangxin died. That broken sword was the best proof of that. After a long time, someone opened his mouth in a trembling voice, but he couldn't say a word. Others were also in a trance. This battle was arranged by the descendants of the Wilderness Taoist Court, the Heaven and Earth Taoist Court, the Taowu Battle Clan, and the Blood Kailan Battle Clan on the peak of Mount Yulong. In this battle, they had a large number of people and carefully planned to kill Lin Sun. But in the end, they were all dead. This battle began with Lin Sun climbing the mountain, killing all the way to the top of Mount Yulong. He alone broke the demon-slaying formation and slaughtered all the enemies. Hundreds of elites of major forces, and many of the best on the great saint's list of starry sky, all turned into a bloody mess on the ground. Only he stood alone on the top of the mountain, and all was silent. On the ancient bluestone mountain path, Ahu stretched her body. Her slender waist outlined a soul-stirring curve. She breathed a sigh of relief, and a pair of limpid eyes glanced at the dumbfounded spectators around her. She couldn't help but smile and said, "Are all of you staying here to spar with Demon God Lin?" Her voice was clear and melodious. The spectators came to their senses as if awakened from a dream, and immediately rushed down the mountain road with a sudden change of expression. Who dared to stay? The top of Mount Yulong was full of corpses and pools of blood soaked the ground. How terrible it was! Once regarded as an opponent by Lin Sun, the consequences would be unimaginable. Demon God Lin? That's really an appropriate name. On the mountain road, many people were recalling and remembering the name that once shocked the ancient desolation realm, like the sun in the sky. It could be foreseen that with the spread of today's battle, this name would also be widely spread, and it was even very likely to spread to the starry sky ancient road. Few on the top of Mount Yulong, Lin Sun also breathed a long sigh of relief. The previous battle and killing had vented his inner resentment and anger, and he felt relaxed. He began to clean up the spoils. The treasures left behind by over 100 disciples of the great powers included divine treasures, divine materials, spirit herbs, precious treasures, and so on and so forth. It was a superb collection of treasures that flowed with multicolored light. The wealth of peerless figures like Gu Tsangxin, Kuan Jilin, and Tao Jianxing was beyond imagination. "Young master, Can you leave all those holy treasures to me? In the insignificant bow, Wu Kei, the gray-haired young man, asked. Yes. Lin Sun readily agreed. As a spirit, Wu Kei had been suppressed and tortured by Golden Crow for thousands of years. His own pneuma had long been severely damaged. The reason why he helped Lin Sun to fight before was that he had refined a lot of holy treasures and recovered a little bit of pneuma. But a little bit of pneuma was also consumed in this battle, so even if Wu Kei didn't mention it, Lin Sun would help him to recover. Clatter! Lin Sun waved his sleeve and threw all the holy treasures he had collected to Wu Kei, leaving only some useful treasures for himself. For example, the purple Een lightning whip, the spatial saint treasure, the Tai Yu flying sword, and several other treasures of their own. Lin Sun's generosity made Wu Kei slightly stunned and surprised. Young master, when I recover, I will help you conquer the starry sky and kill all the enemies in the world, Wu Kei said calmly. Lin Sun smiled and said yes. Brother Lin. Ahu's yellow dress was fluttering, and she came from a distance like an ethereal fairy. Ahu, this is yours. I've left all the holy treasures, but there are many rare magical materials and precious medicines, which should be useful to you. Lin Sun handed a storage bag to Ahu, which was part of the spoils. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Ahu blinked her eyes with a smile. She didn't refuse. She had long been used to Lin Sun's style. She knew that if she refused, it would make Lin Sun feel like an outsider. And that was what Hu appreciated most about Lin Sun. He was never stingy when treating his own people. Look, that's the mysterious forbidden area on Mount Yulong. Ahu pointed to the distance, which was covered with mist and exuded a mysterious and frightening aura. This place is regarded as one of the 9 secrets of the Kunlun ruins. In the previous battle, some people tried to escape into it to save their lives, but they died in an instant. Ahu stood beside Lin Sun with her beautiful eyes, and her moist red lips exhaled a fragrant breath. This also confirms some rumors. Perhaps only those who hold the flying immortal token can enter it safely. Lin Sun nodded and remembered one thing. He communicated with Yuan Fatian through voice transmission. Brother Yuan, when you climbed the mountain, did you know who held the flying immortal token and entered the mysterious forbidden area? It seems to be Mi Hengzhen and Yi Mo. Yuan Fatian was also a little uncertain. By the way, those guys captured me and Little Pring King and took our flying immortal tokens. A guy named Lu Xuanji entered the mysterious forbidden area with a group of masters. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. Really? Yes, it happened yesterday, the little golden-winged rock also said. Okay, I see. Lin Sun took a deep breath and looked at Ahu beside him. It seems that we have to go to this mysterious forbidden area. Ahu nodded and said, of course. Without any hesitation, the two of them held the flying immortal tokens in their hands and flashed towards the area that was covered in mist. Clatter! As if entering the chaotic tide, the fog rolled and covered the sky. Nothing could be seen. Walking in it, there was a terrible taboo power. Lin Sun and Ahu could not help but feel a strong sense of danger in their hearts. However, before they could react, the flying immortal tokens in their hands buzzed and rushed out a brilliant illusory halo, shrouding them. Buzz. After that, their figures were swiftly teleported away and vanished within the surging mist. This is, when their vision became clear, Ahu couldn't help but be stunned. This was a world that seemed to be collapsing. Pieces of broken land floated in the void, looking extremely messy. At this time, she and Lin Sun were both standing on one of the floating lands. Looking around, the void was whistling with destructive wind. There was no vitality, and everywhere was barren like ruins. Is this one of the 9 secrets in the Kunlun ruins? Lin Sun was also surprised. He had thought that this place was destined to be a blessed land like the Peach Garden secret realm, where there was a great fortune and even a chance related to becoming an emperor. Chapter 1820. The broken world and the scene of desolation and destruction exuded an indescribable sense of desolation. Regardless of whether there is a fortune here or not, the most important thing now is to find me Hungjin and the others. Lin Sun's eyes were calm. He and who took action together, flying through the void and searching among the floating continents. Do you know about the 9 secrets of Kunlun? Lin Sun asked on the way. Hu sorted out his thoughts and said slowly, I've heard of it. I've heard that in the past, many powerhouses have come to the Kunlun ruins to search for fortuitous encounters. Among the areas they've explored, the 9 secret places are the most mysterious, and the 3 forbidden places are the most dangerous. The 9 secrets refer to the 9 secret realms. Mount Yulong is just one of them. In addition, there are 8 similar secret realms in other places of Kunlun ruins. Only those who hold the Flying Immortal token have the opportunity to enter the 9 secret. That's why we were targeted by so many cultivators when we appeared together. The Flying Immortal token is so useful that anyone would be jealous of it. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling strange. The starry sky ancient path is so vast and supreme, but why is there no Flying Immortal token? Instead, there is such a mysterious token in the 9 regions? Hu said, I don't know the reason, but I've heard a rumor. Lin Sun was interested. What rumor? There is a saying that in ancient times, the 9 regions were the center of the world and regarded as the origin of the cultivation civilization. At that time, the Ultimate Ruins and the Kunlun Ruins both had paths to the 9 regions. However, as time passed, the 9 regions underwent tremendous changes. They could no longer satisfy the needs of those who sought the Tao, and they gradually declined. After all, even you know that the higher one's cultivation is, the greater the demand for cultivation resources would be in order to ascend a higher path towards the Tao. Although the 9 regions are vast, when the cultivators reach the Saint Realm, the rules and aura of the Great Way between heaven and earth can no longer help them make progress on the path. So, in the endless years since ancient times, more and more cultivators have embarked on the journey to the starry sky ancient path. This isn't just happening in the 9 regions, it's also happening in other heavenly worlds. However, only the 9 regions have the Endless Ruins and Kunlun Ruins. This is also the reason why the 9 regions possess such a mysterious treasure like the Flying Immortal token. Of course, this is only a rumor. I'm afraid not even emperors know the truth. At this point, Lin Sun vaguely understood. He suddenly had a bold idea. If one were to say that the 9 regions were the birthplace of the cultivation civilization, then, therefore, the ancient desolation realm was likely to be the core area. And the lower world, in the ancient desolation realm, was very likely to be the core of the core, the original land of origin. The reason why he had such an idea was because the lower realms were not simple. Just one of the 4 great god ruins, the Ultimate Ruins, was located there. But this was just Lin's idea. There were countless secrets in the universe and the starry sky. With his current experience, he was still far from being able to deduce the quintessence of the world and figure out the origins of the Grand Tao. What are the 3 great forbidden lands? Lin Sun continued to ask. Hu said, one is the pilgrimage platform, which is rumored to contain the secret of becoming an emperor or ancestor. The second is the Tao suppression cliff, which is rumored to be the origin aura of all the Tao in the world. The third is the nameless forbidden land, which is the most dangerous place in Kunlun ruins. Since ancient times, almost all those who entered it died. When she spoke up to hear, Ahu's eyes flashed with fear. I once heard that during the primeval times, someone had once returned alive from the nameless forbidden region. However, he'd lost all his memories, and he'd gone mad. Moreover, his body was coiled with the terrifying aura of calamity, and he perished not long after he returned to the ancient passageway. Before he died, he left a sentence, which is still spread on the starry sky ancient path. Lin Sun couldn't help asking, What did he say? The path of cultivation is broken, and there is nothing to seek. A few words came out of Ahu's lips. It was a very ordinary sentence, but it seemed to carry a kind of heart-palpitating power, which made Lin Sun's body a little cold. The path of cultivation was broken? Did this mean that even if a cultivator exhausted his life's efforts, even if he stepped into the Emperor realm and became the ancestor of a Tao, he was destined to be unable to touch the end of the Tao? Don't take it seriously. This was just left by that crazy guy before he died. Although it was spread in the world, few people took it seriously. Ahu said, however, the nameless Forbidden Land is indeed the most dangerous place in Kunlun ruins. Until now, no one dares to try to approach it. Lin Sun nodded. After understanding the 9 secrets and 3 prohibitions, he realized that there were many secrets buried in Kunlun ruins, which were far beyond his imagination. This place seemed to be covered with a thick fog. No matter who was in it, they would feel that there were too many unknowns and secret. We can only stay for half a year at most this time. After half a year, the path leading to the outside world in Kunlun ruins will be sealed and disappeared again. Ahu sighed with emotion. It's also destined that it's impossible for us to see through all the secrets in Kunlun ruins this time. It's been like this since ancient times. As the two talked, they had already crossed many floating land. Just as Lin Sun was about to say something, a furious roar suddenly came from afar. Why not? Why? I, Lu Xuanji, am a pure-blooded descendant of the Blood Kailan clan. I was born with great luck. It's only been 300 years since I started cultivating, and I've already ranked 37th on the Starry Sky Great Saint list. With my background, I can't even obtain the recognition of the power of living beings. How many people in this world are qualified? Retreat, I'm going to fight again. His voice was filled with endless resentment and unwillingness. Lu Xuanji, Lin Sun and Ahu looked at each other, and their spirits were lifted. Whoosh! Lin Sun circulated his Bai Qi and covered both of their figures. Then, he quietly approached the distance. Not long after, an extremely vast floating land appeared. It stretched across the void and covered an area of 1,000 miles. The mountains on it had collapsed, and not a single blade of grass grew. It was also extremely barren. Only the central area seemed very different. There was a mountain that was shaped like a big bell. It was majestic and tall, and its entire body was filled with chaotic qi, emitting an ancient and boundless aura. At the foot of the mountain stood a group of cultivators. There were more than a dozen of them, and each of them had extraordinary power and astonishing aura. The leader was a tall and imposing man in a blood-colored robe with a blood-colored horn on his head. He stood in front of the mountain with his long hair fluttering in the wind. His expression was gloomy and ferocious. His eyes were fixed on the stone wall in front of the mountain, and there was anger between his brows. There was no need to guess. This person must be Lu Xuanji, a pure-blooded descendant of the Blood Kailan clan. Lin Sun and Ahu approached quietly. With the cover of Bai Qi, their appearance did not attract anyone's attention. To their surprise, as they approached, the majestic mountain that looked like a big bell seemed to be growing larger and larger, more and more majestic in the end. It gave people a feeling that it could support the universe and was unreachable. Lin Sun and Ahu became more vigilant and cautious. They didn't stop until they were thousands of feet away from Lu Xuanji and the others. They hid behind a pile of rocks. Look at the stone wall of the mountain, Ahu said quickly. Lin Sun looked over and saw that the bottom of the mountain was suffused with chaotic qi. He could faintly see that the stone wall was smooth like a mirror, and it was branded with an ancient pattern. The sun, moon, and stars revolved around the pattern. On the boundless earth, there were countless ancestors and living beings worshipping and offering sacrifices with devout and solemn expressions. There was a bell hanging in the sky. This was an extremely ancient ancestor offering diagram, and it emitted a solemn and divine aura that was shocking. However, The object of their sacrifice was a bell. It hung below the sky, and it was shockingly large. The bell was branded with dense and obscure Tao markings. Even though it was only a stone inscription, when Lin Sun and the others looked at the bell, they actually felt a supreme imposing aura that could suppress the world, shake the stars, and spread through the heavens. Undoubtedly, this diagram was extremely extraordinary, and it was very likely to contain a great fortune. Lu Xuanji probably wants to obtain the acknowledgement of this stone inscription. Who seemed to be lost in thought. After that, she was stunned because she noticed that Lin Sun's expression was slightly strange. His eyes were fixed on the bell, and he seemed to be very surprised and in disbelief. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I seem to have seen this bell before." Lin Sun's eyes were a little dazed. Who couldn't help but be surprised. This was one of the 9 secrets of Kunlun ruins, and that stone inscription wasn't something that anyone could see. But Lin Sun actually said that he had seen the bell in the stone inscription, which surprised her as well. Is that it? Scenes appeared in Lin Sun's mind. When he first entered the western border of the ancient desolation, he once participated in a Tao discussion lantern festival. It was on the Kangwu mountain, and there was an ancient green lamp tree on the mountain. He overcame all difficulties along the way, experienced numerous tests, and obtained various opportunities. For example, when Lin Sun comprehended the way of star obliteration for the first time in a forest of tablets, he saw the shocking scenes of the star obliteration emperor running all the way in the starry sky. For example, in the test of Tao discussion, Lin Sun obtained the miraculous ancient treasure, the Great Way immeasurable bottle. In addition, many unimaginable things happened in the Tao discussion lantern festival. Among them, the most unforgettable thing for Lin Sun was the appearance of a Taoist altar at the last stage with a bronze bell on it. The bell was only half a foot tall, and it was covered with dense Taoist patterns. It was mysterious and unfathomable. At that time, in order to fight for the bell, Lin Sun, Yu Lingkong, and the others even had an extremely fierce battle. But in the end, no one was able to obtain the bell, because the karma involved in the bell was too great, and it was not something that Lin Sun could get close to at that time. Chapter 1821. Lin Sun's eyes were in a trance. Even though many years had passed, he still deeply remembered that bronze bell, and it was called the Grand Tao without rules. But was the bell in the ancestors' All Souls sacrificial painting really the lawless Great Way bell? Damn it! Suddenly Lu Xuanji roared. He stood in front of the stone wall with his long hair fluttering in the wind and his face full of anger. All the other cultivators nearby kept quiet out of fear. Big brother, countless cultivators have been here since ancient times, but no one has been recognized by this painting. A hoarse voice sounded. Since you can't do it, why don't you let go? There are so many fortunes in the Kunlun relic. It's not worth wasting your time and experience here. Only then did Lin Sun and who see a thin figure sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the mountain amidst the chaotic qi. This man had disheveled hair, a handsome face, and indifference between his eyebrows. A ferocious blood-red broadsword was inserted into the ground in front of him. Gray chains spread out from the blood-red broadsword, and the other end of the chains was inserted into a cultivator's body. What? Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank when he saw this. The figures chiseled and bound by gray chains were Mi Hengzhen, Yi Moha, Qi Lingxiao, Yu Jianming, and others. However, all of them seemed as if they'd lost their consciousness. Their expressions were stiff and their eyes were lifeless, and they seemed like numerous puppets. The gray chains pierced into their bodies like bloodthirsty leeches. Wisps of blood light could be seen spreading towards the blood-red broadsword inserted into the ground. Saint Blood refining method of weapons. A cold light flashed in Ahu's eyes. He recognized this weird method of weapon refining. It was a secret technique of the Blood Kylan battle clan. It was the cruelest and most overbearing way to refine a Saint Blood refining method of weapons. These bastards, their methods are truly cruel. Lin Sun's expression grew colder when he learned this. Ahu, let's act separately later. I'll kill Lu Xuanji, and you go to help me Hengzhen and others. Ahu said without hesitation, Okay. Lin Sun thought for a while and said, The lives of me Hengzhen and others are completely in the hands of that guy. When we take action we must, Ahu said, Don't worry, I promise to kill that guy as soon as possible. I won't let anything happen to your friends. Lin Sun nodded. Both of them were silent. They were accumulating power and were about to attack. Lu Chong, are you saying that I can't do it? In front of the stone wall, Lu Xuanji's face was gloomy as he looked coldly at the figure sitting cross-legged on the ground. The young man called Lu Chong said indifferently, I just don't want you to waste any more time. Lu Xuanji snorted coldly and turned his head to look at the ancestral 10,000 spirits sacrificial painting on the stone wall. This is the power of all living beings. As long as I can successfully control it, I can become a true sage and not a saint. Sage. The two only differ by a single word, but the realm they represent is completely different. Only those who succeed in the great sage realm can be called a sage and control the power of all living beings. Only then can they become the king of sages on the great path. This kind of opportunity and creation is rare even on the starry ancient path. Now that I've encountered it, how can I give up? As long as I can obtain the power of all living beings, there will be a place for me in the top 10 of the Starry Sky Great Sage list. As he spoke, Lu Xuanji became extremely excited. He took a deep breath and his body glowed. He spread his divine sense again to sense the ancestral 10,000 spirits sacrificial painting on the stone wall. Boom! But in just a moment, Lu Xuanji's body trembled violently as if he was struck by lightning. He flew out violently and coughed up blood. The cultivators nearby were all agitated. Lu Chong, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, frowned and said, You can't force it. Why bother? Shut up! Lu Xuanji roared. He got up again as if he had gone mad. He spread his divine sense and power to sense the painting on the stone wall. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a broken blade that was jade white like snow suddenly tore through the sky, and it slashed down swiftly and violently at an unbelievable speed. At that instant, it seemed as if the 9 heavens had appeared out of thin air. Watch out! At practically the exact same time, Lu Chong, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, shouted. However, he was still a step too late. Lu Xuanji only wanted to obtain the acknowledgement of the power of all living beings, so he'd never imagined that there would be a sudden attack at this moment. Moreover, it was so swift and domineering. He didn't have the time to dodge at all, and he could only rely on the instincts he'd gained from fighting for many years to resist it. Boom! Amidst the earth-shattering rumble, Lu Xuanji's entire body was sent flying. The armor covering his body was crushed and blasted apart. There was a wound on his chest that was so deep that bones could be seen. Blood flowed out like a waterfall. Thump! His figure fell to the ground and let out a muffled groan. He was in an extremely sorry state. Shit, someone launched a sneak attack. The nearby cultivators reacted as well. Their expressions changed abruptly, and they withdrew their treasures one after another. Killing intent coiled around their bodies, and all of them became vigilant. Which shameless bastard dares to launch a sneak attack on me? Lu Xuanji roared furiously. His face was livid and hideous, and the injuries on his body were recovering at a visible speed. Swoosh! The broken blade flashed as it attacked once more. Right at this moment, Lu Xuanji finally saw his opponent clearly, and he couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. Lin Sun, how could it possibly be you? Before his voice could finish resounding through the air, his entire body was blasted flying once more by the broken blade, and he coughed up blood repeatedly as he'd suffered a heavy injury. Even if he'd made sufficient preparations and resisted with all his might, he was still completely suppressed by Lin Sun's full-force attack. Kill! The nearby cultivators attacked as well, and they didn't dare hesitate at all. At this moment, Lin Sun was like a ferocious gale. His figure glowed as he teleported and attacked explosively, and he deduced his strength to the limit. Rumble! In an instant, deafening rumbling resounded as those cultivators that charged towards Qin Shi were crushed, and their bodies were blasted flying. A few amongst them were even directly crushed on the spot, and their bodies exploded into pieces. This was astounding, and they didn't dare believe their eyes. Even Lu Xuanji couldn't help but gasp. This fellow is actually much stronger than he was on Inverted Mountain. What made Lu Xuanji most uneasy was that, how did Lin Sun come in? The peak of Yulong Mountain had long been guarded by Gu Tsangxin, Tao Jianxing, Kuan Jilin, and other strong cultivators, and they'd even set up a peerless killing formation. But Lin Sun had appeared here at this moment. Didn't this mean that Gu Tsangxin and the others' arrangements couldn't stop Lin Sun? At the thought of this, Lu Xuanji's heart trembled. He was the clearest about the layout on the peak of Yulong Mountain, which was powerful enough to kill a sage king, but it couldn't stop Lin Sun. How terrifying was this? Rumble! Without giving Lu Xuanji a chance to think, Lin Sun had already rushed over violently. He was like an ancient demon god descending to the world, his body like a great abyss, and his qi surged like a bull. He was extremely powerful. Each of those cultivators who tried to stop him was also a ruthless character, and their cultivation was no weaker than the great sage realm. But in Lin Sun's hands, they were like chickens and dogs that couldn't withstand a single blow. In just a moment, they were utterly defeated, and blood flowed like a river. Die! Lin Sun's eyes were like cold lightning, locking onto Lu Xuanji. The terrifying power made Lu Xuanji shudder. Lin Sun, do you want to see these people die? Suddenly, Lu Chong, who had been sitting at the foot of the mountain, spoke indifferently, threatening Mi Hengzhen, Yi Mo, and the others with their lives. He had always been calm. Lin Sun's charging figure paused. Lu Xuanji, on the other hand, seemed to have seen hope again. He grinned and said, Lu Chong, kill a captive first and show this little bastard. Idiot. A hint of pity appeared in Lin Sun's eyes. He rushed forward without hesitation, as if he didn't care about any threat at all. Lu Xuanji was surprised and caught off guard. Boom! The next moment, he was sent flying again. His body was bathed in blood, and the wounds were shocking. He was almost split in half. One should know that Lu Xuanji was a pureblood descendant of the Blood Kailan battle clan. Lu Ong, who died in Lin Sun's hands, was far less powerful than him. But in a head-on confrontation, he was still completely crushed by Lin Sun. Lu Chong, why aren't you doing anything? Lu Xuanji panicked completely and roared. Plop! At this moment, a horrifying and bloody scene appeared. Lu Chong, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly had his head separated from his neck. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Lu Xuanji was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. He died silently just like that? At the same time, Hu appeared in front of Lu Chong's headless corpse. She was dressed in a yellow dress and looked like a fairy. She waved her hand gently and said in her heart, "Treasure, come back." In the void, an almost transparent flying dagger flashed into her palm and turned into a mysterious gourd pattern before disappearing. God-slaying gourd. In order to kill Lu Chong as soon as possible, Hu once again used this mysterious ancient treasure. However, Lu Xuanji could no longer see any of this. Boom! Just when he was in shock, Lin Sun had already charged over. The broken blade swept across and cut Lu Xuanji in half. Lu Xuanji's death was filled with extreme unwillingness and resentment. Everything happened too quickly. From Lin Sun's attack to Lu Chong's death, a series of actions were completed in just a few breaths. It was incredibly fast. Whether it was Lin Sun or Hu, they did not hold back when they attacked. What they wanted was to kill the enemy in one fell swoop. It would be hard for Lu Xuanji and the others to survive if they wanted to. At this point, Lin Sun let out a long sigh. Without even looking at the corpses on the ground, he came to Ah Hu and asked, "How are they?" Ah Hu had already started to remove the gray chains on Mi Hengzhen, Yi Mo, and the others. "They are covered with the power of the secret forbidden spell. Although it won't be life-threatening, it will take some time to get rid of it." Ah Hu answered casually. "That's good." Lin Sun was relieved. He did not stay idle either. He cleaned up the spoils of war on the battlefield. Seeing that Ah Hu was still busy, he did not dare to disturb her and came to the stone wall of the mountain. Raising his eyes, Lin Sun looked at the law bell in the ancestral people sacrificial painting on the stone wall. A sense of déjà vu rose in his heart. Was it really the Great Way lawless bell? The 5th chapter is up. Today's explosive update has ended because Old Fish could not hold on any longer. He had caught a cold yesterday, but he would definitely be scolded by many if he said that he had asked for leave yesterday. So, he forced himself to finish the 5th chapter today before daring to say that he was sick. It was not to move anyone, but to let everyone know that he would do his best to do what he had promised. Chapter 1822. Looking at the Ancestor and All Souls sacrificial painting on the stone wall, Lin Sun recalled some past event. At the end of the Taoist Lamp Discussion Lantern Festival in Shiheng Territory, a psychic king herb appeared with the temperament of an old rascal. But it was also because of this psychic king herb that Lin Sun learned something about the Great Way lawless bell. This psychic king herb once said, "The Great Way lawless bell was forged by sages in ancient times with their whole life's efforts. When the bell rings, it represents the gathering of the power of all living beings, which is enough to change the world and make ghosts and gods retreat. It's so wonderful that whoever can control it can control the power of all living beings." It also said, "The Great Way lawless bell represents the power of all living beings. When sages successfully refined it, they suffered unprecedented punishment because it violated the taboo. Even if they could get it, they couldn't use it in a short time. If you want to use this treasure, you need the power of all living beings. The power of all living beings is related to the wish of all living beings. Only the mighty who succeed in the divine path of pilgrimage can collect it." At that time, Lin Sun clearly remembered that it was said that when ancient sages preached to the world and enlightened all living beings, they would naturally get the faith of all living beings, which then condensed into a mysterious power, the wish power. Just like the statues in temples in the secular world, which were worshipped by mortals all year round, there would naturally be a solemn and frightening atmosphere. That kind of atmosphere was the most superficial wish power. On the other hand, the so-called wish energy of cultivators was different. It represented a grand vision of cultivating the Tao, and every single true sage would establish their own grand aspiration towards the grand Tao. For this reason, some sages chose to enter the secular world to enlighten all living beings and carry forward their great wish. If they got the faith and recognition of all living beings, they could get a steady stream of wish power. Similarly, some sages chose to enter the secular world to verify their own vision with all the Tao in the world. When they opened up a new way of cultivation or created a new Tao, they could also get the wish power. This kind of wish power was also called the wish power of the Great Way. Whether entering the secular world or coming out of the secular world, if one wanted to become a sage from a sage, it was destined to be inseparable from the wish power. Lin Sun still remembered that in the mulberry forest of the bloodthirsty battlefield, the mysterious golden cicada had made a great wish that was enough to shock the world and shock the ages. He hoped that one day, all living beings in the world could become saints. This was also a great ambition of the great Tao. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but think of the many attempts Lu Xuanji had made when facing this stone wall just now. Lu Xuanji was certain that the ancestral multitude spirit sacrificial painting contained the power of all living beings. As long as he could control it, he would be able to become a true sage during the divine Tao consecration and not just a saint. The difference between sage and sage was like the difference between heaven and earth. Only a person at the great saint realm who succeeded in attaining the Zen was able to be called a sage. They were able to control the energy of all living beings, and in the future, they were able to become a king of sages on the path towards the Tao. For this reason, Lu Xuanji had tried many times, but he had failed in the end. At this time, recalling some of the past events and comparing it with Lu Xuanji's words, Lin soon felt more and more that the Tao bell in the All Spirits sacrificial painting was very likely to be the Great Way lawless bell. Only by attaining the Zen in the divine Tao can one become a sage. The word sage distinguishes one from other sages in the world. As the saying goes, when one sees a virtuous person, one must think alike. It represents the height of one's cultivation, and also a power that surpasses that of a sage. Lin Sun was lost in thought. He was already at the consummation of the great saint realm, so he naturally knew the difference between a sage and a sage. Because only a sage could become a king of sages on the path towards the Tao. As for a sage, he might be able to advance to the sage king realm, but he was destined to have no fate with the path towards the Tao. Originally, according to Lin Sun's plan, he would only consider attaining the Zen as a sage when he stepped into the consummation of the great saint realm. But now, such an opportunity appeared in front of him. Finally, Lin Sun took a deep breath and decided to give it a try. Clatter, his divine sense spread out and poured into the All Spirits sacrificial painting on the stone wall. Suddenly, his body and mind trembled, and a vigorous ancient bell seemed to ring in his mind. In a trance, he seemed to see a Tao bell, floating in the ancient times. It was so large that it was immeasurable, and its whole body was covered with dense ancient patterns. As it shook, the bell rang through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Natural disasters, calamities, evil spirits, and sufferings in the world all collapsed and vanished in the sound of the bell. Countless creatures who had suffered all kinds of disasters were grateful. They prostrated on the ground and worshipped devoutly. Wisps of the wishes of all living beings were produced, like the incense of faith, and were constantly absorbed by the Tao bell. Boom! Soon, these images dissipated, leaving only a Tao bell floating in the river of time, ringing with an ancient and vast sound. The bell represented all living beings. The ringing of the bell represented the will of all living beings. The power generated could reverse the universe and eliminate disasters. At the same time, various understandings emerged in Lin Sun's mind. A sage represented a kind of cultivation realm, enlightening all living beings with one's own strength, and those who gained the recognition and faith of all living beings could control the power of all living beings. Only in this way could one be called a sage. Similarly, using one's own great wish to verify with the heavens, opening up a new path for future generations, and creating new Taoism, one could control the wish of the Great Way and also be called a sage. In short, there were 2 ways to become a sage. One was to control the wish of all living beings, and the other was to control the wish of the Great Way. Since I started my cultivation, I've been pursuing an unprecedented path in the heavens. It's equivalent to opening up a new path for future generations. Lin Sun's black eyes glowed with wisdom. Creating my own method in the sage realm is also unprecedented. It's equivalent to creating a new Taoism for future generations. When I reach the consummation of the great sage realm, I can control the wish of the Great Way and become a sage. Having figured this out, Lin Sun looked at the picture of ancestors and all spirits worshipping ceremony again. His mind was clear and empty, without any desire or desire. For Lu Xuanji, this stone inscription contained the power of all living beings, which could be called the supreme creation. But in Lin Sun's eyes, it was completely indifferent. He had never preached to the world or enlightened all living beings, so he naturally didn't care about gaining the recognition and faith of all living beings. In other words, Lin Sun didn't have the idea of representing all living beings at all, so he naturally wouldn't covet the wish of all living beings. At this moment, the only thing that made Lin Sun curious was why the pattern of the Great Way Infinite Bell appeared in one of the 9 secrets of Kunlun. Could it be that this bell came from the Kunlun ruins? While Lin Sun was thinking, a voice suddenly sounded in his heart. "My little friend, why don't you use the Great Way Infinite Bottle to take away the power of all living beings?" The voice was vigorous and resounding like a bell. Who? Lin Sun was shocked, and then the image of a bronze Tao bell naturally appeared in his mind. It was ancient and vigorous, full of mysterious and supreme aura. Don't be surprised, my little friend. There are 9 treasures hidden in the 9 secrets of Kunlun, all of which were born in the refining mother furnace. A long time ago, these 9 treasures were taken away by 9 destined people one by one. And I am a wisp of the will of the Great Way Infinite Bell. In his mind, the melodious sound of the bell turned into a language, and was heard by Lin Sun. He was shocked. It was really the Great Way Infinite Bell. Lin Sun couldn't help saying in his heart, "The refining mother furnace? Is it the refining mother furnace that turned into the refining place?" He still clearly remembered that he'd obtained a black piece of copper on the inverted mountain in the treasure refinement grounds, and he'd seen some shocking scenes from it. For example, this copper block was left by a refining mother furnace. In the beginning, 9 Emperor Dao treasures were born from the artifact refining cauldron. The 9 Emperor Dao treasures were a godly sword, a battle spear, a copper lamp, a battle flag, a Dao seal, a jade bottle, a set of armor, a jade plate, and a godly saber. Yes. The voice of the will left behind by the great Dao lawless bell resounded. The refinement source cauldron forged the 9 Emperor weapons to defend Kunlun, but because of this, it violated a taboo and encountered an unprecedented great calamity, causing the refinement source cauldron to completely dissipate. And these 9 Emperor weapons were hidden in the 9 secret. In the following years, they were taken away by destined people one by one. Lin Sun understood completely now. The refining place was formed after the refining mother furnace was disintegrated, and the 9 Emperor weapons that had been refined by the refining mother furnace were hidden in the 9 secrets of Kunlun from then on. Unfortunately, in the past years, people had come to take away these Emperor weapons one by one. I feel the breath of the Great Way Infinite Bottle on you. This thing is one of the 9 Emperor weapons. It was originally hidden in the Infinite Lake, one of the 9 secrets of Kunlun. Later, it was taken away by a successor of Mountain Heart Mountain named Li Jui. The successor of Mountain Heart Mountain. Li Jui. Lin Sun was stunned. Wasn't this one of his senior brothers? Li Jui is a very interesting person. He is generous and unrestrained. When he left, I went to the ancient desolation realm with him with the power of the dark parasol divine tree. The voice of the Great Way Infinite Bell sounded again. Later, Li Jui and his junior brothers wanted to go to the starry sky to prove their Tao, so they left the ancient desolation realm. Before he left, Li Jui left the great Tao immeasurable bottle on the azure parasol mountain. He said that one day, an inheritor of the Fangtsuan mountain would come here, and that the great Tao immeasurable bottle would be a greeting gift for his junior apprentice brother. Lin Sun was completely stunned. He remembered that the Tao Discussion Lantern show was held on the dark Parasol Mountain. He remembered that the Great Way Infinite Bottle was obtained in the second test of the Tao Discussion Lantern show. At the end of the test, there was a group of men and women who left imprints to bid farewell to him and called him Junior Brother. Lin Sun clearly remembered that there was once a spirited and handsome young man called Senior Brotherly who once said, "I'm not afraid of you. Anyone who enters this sect, regardless of age, is my brother or sister. Junior brother, one day we will meet on the great path. Take care." This chapter contains a lot of information. The Tao Discussion Lantern show, the Great Way Infinite Bottle, the Great Way Infinite Bell, and Li Jui all appeared when Lin Sun first entered the West Heng territory of the ancient desolation. The specific content is in chapters 857 to 877 and 923 to 924. If you are interested, you can read them again.